Right.
Good day, fellow rockers and moshers. Welcome to the Metal Connection, the connection to all things metal. I'm J-Dub, and today on the show, we are doing a 10 essential German metal albums as picked by each individual viewer. So we're going to probably have one great discussion here, and I think we're going to go ahead and get everyone to introduce themselves and then get the show going here. So actually, I'll get Steve to go first if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Steve Tracy, guitar player from Chronic Kill, thrash metal band from Kelowna, BC, Canada. And I'm honored to have an opportunity to give you my essential German hard rock metal that influenced me. And I think I'll start no particular order, but I guess the first one that comes to my mind that killed me the most is got to be the Scorpions. I mean, they laid the groundwork, and the album that impacted me when I heard it was called Lonesome Crow. And it features Michael and Rudolf Schechner both on guitars, and the sound of that album, so much compatible to Black Sabbath that I was like, wow, this is Scorpions that nobody has ever heard. And you know what? It totally rocks to this day. I still can't get enough of it. And yeah. Scorpions, what more can you say, right? They laid the groundwork for German metal. They're it. So, I don't know what else you want me to say about it. Great album. It's hard to get. I've tried to get it after I lost my original. I ended up with the cassette and the CD, but I couldn't get the vinyl. And then some guy wanted me to pick up the vinyl, and he wanted big money for a repress. And I was like, you know what? It's all good, bro. Anyway, I'll let someone else go because, hey, it's all about everyone's picks.
Yeah, that you're definitely on spot with that, where they laid the groundwork for all future German bands as well, right? I got to assume pretty well every band looked up to them at that point, and that was quite early on in their career. I believe that was 72.
It was in the early 70s, yeah.
That was 72, right? And that's before they later on got that big arena rock sound. So it's definitely that early on Scorpion sound.
Live off the floor.
I don't know if anyone else has any opinion on Lonesome Crow there.
It's a good album. I think it's got a bit of a psychedelic vibe to it, and it's got that Black Sabbath influence. So I think it's a really good pick. I like it.
Right,
the Shaker Brothers, nice.
Right, and I think we'll actually maybe we'll just do everyone introductions, and then we'll spin back around here with the next pick. But if we can have Jack actually introduce himself next here.
Hey guys, I'm Jack. Born as Jared, but everyone has known me as Jack since I was a young lad. I've been playing in a lot of Australian metal bands since I got my act together and just started focusing on some music. I joined mostly as a vocalist, as a bass player, moved on to the guitar. Currently doing a doom band called Graves for Gods, which the debut will be released early January next year. Here to talk about the metal that has influenced me, most essential metal for me. And I think going right back, tracking it back, it started not obviously in German metal, but listening to local radio, I came across a band called Warlock. And forever since then, clearly they've stuck in my heart. True as steel, as you would say. It was very difficult for me to pick what you would call a most essential album from Warlock. So I'm going to go with clearly their last and final banger, which was True Triumph and Agony. There it is. This one is a beautiful gatefold. I don't have a lot of vinyl at hand, so I'm wowing you at the beginning. There it is. It's an amazing album. Even though most of the band had left by the time, basically Doro moved to America and was pretty much doing it solo. I think maybe one guitarist was still with her, but I'm pretty sure that she was working with an American guitarist at the time from memory. And I read some stories about it saying that there was a lot of storm happening at the time when they recorded it, and it was very basically electric. Came out big big, and you can all hear it in there. You know, you have all of the great tracks that are on there. You know, I Rule the Real Ones. I just love the way her vocals just go right out there. They're just crazy. And I couldn't follow Doro when she went on beyond that, because she became more focused with her delivery and lost the whole outrageous screaming that she was doing with Warlock, which I love so much. It's nice to see them make a return to that. But yeah, I'm saying for my pick, Triumph and Agony is one of my most essential albums. And I think that if you haven't heard it, it's a great example of prime German metal.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what specific interview, but I know I came across a Doro interview where she actually doesn't consider her first Doro solo album as even a solo album. She actually just considers that an extension of Warlock. So, you know, again, touching on what you were going on about how you're not sure how many of the original members were involved in that first Doro solo album, but she considers her first solo album not even to be a solo album. She just considers that to be a Warlock album, and then the following album to be her first official Doro album. So I always thought that was kind of interesting, even though it says Doro on it. But you know, I think there was a name change for legal reasons actually at that point. Yeah, and that's obviously a great choice that is a fan favorite. It's chock full of hits and anthems and things like that. So definitely a great choice. And you know, definitely got to assume Warlock's going to appear on somebody else's list here. And so it's just a matter of which ones, right? So, or which one you prefer or whatever. And if anyone else needs to chime in or anything like that. No? Okay, cool. So I think we'll go next and get Dave here to introduce himself, and he might as well make his pick as well as the introduction. Oh.
Dude.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Just, I didn't get the email about the Motorhead shirt we had to wear. That's
Right.
all.
Right.
No.
I was wondering, I'm like, wait, you took off? No, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, well, anyway, yeah, I'm Dave, Newcastle, Australia. 46, love metal, grew up with it. One thing I did love growing up was our local TV programs and radio stations used to play a lot of metal back in those days. And one particular show was called Rage, which was on every Saturday morning, Saturday nights. And that's when I first come across Creator. They played film clips and first seeing Toxic Trace and Betrayer. So definitely one of my essential albums is like hard to choose from the band, but I've gone with Extreme Aggression.
Fuck yeah!
Just love the thrash. Love the band. Loved all the stuff leading up to this album. So yeah, that'd be one of my essential top 10 picks. Maybe not everyone's favorite Creator, but would be my favorite one. So I'm going to run with Extreme Aggression for sure. Thank you. Most of mine are the old thrash power albums, so yeah, that's what I'm into. That's what I love. So they all make my top 10.
Yeah, how good was Rage?
I'm not sure if it's still on. I think it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a radio program as well. It was called the 3 Hours of Power, which was then the 2 Hours of Power, and I'm pretty sure it's gone now. But yeah, back in the day, they were playing all the early Entombed albums and a lot of the early death metal. So it was good to grow up, getting into that through the radio, which kick-started metal career. Nah, it was awesome.
The other clip we got on Rage was Toxic Trace. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to play all the old film clips.
Terrible Certainty. Extreme Aggressions is the best. I mean, in '89, we were covering songs by Creator, Bringer of Torture, Some Pain Will Last, Extreme Aggression. And you know what? we were playing it live and nobody had a clue. They thought it was our tunes. We're like, you guys don't even know who this is. I was like, you will know who Creator is soon enough. Good pick.
Yeah, can't fault any songs on this album. I think they're all great.
Every tune.
Love it. Some Pain Will Last. Yeah, probably my favorite track off the album.
Hey, love us or hate us. Awesome
Nice.
pick, brother.
Okay, yeah, right on. Great pick. And I was trying, I'm not going to try to chime in too much on that because, well, I don't want to give anything away, but, you know, Creator's going to obviously be on my list. There are, you know, probably some other lists. So I think that maybe that album might potentially come up again. So maybe I'll try not to touch on that too much personally. And then I think we'll just go ahead here and then we'll get David here to introduce himself here, and then he might as well do his pick as well.
Sure. Hi, I'm David Biggs. I'm from the USA, and I'm your rock and roll big dog. Now,
Awesome.
that's right. So, you know, when you talk about metal, German metal, one of the first bands that I really got into was Primal Fear. And they're not really a new band. This is their first album from '97. And I saw them in concert and they just blew me away. And I love their Judas Priest type aggression and riffs, and just everything about them is awesome. They do a lot of harmony guitar. The riffs are awesome. The drumming is awesome. And you got Matt Sinner on bass, and he's a part of so many other metal bands, and he produces a lot of stuff. Just an awesome band, awesome songwriters, a lot of power, and they're nice guys. I met them, and I did get this autograph, but you can't really, the kind of fading away here. Yeah, there you go. Awesome record. And, you know, they do a cover of the Deep Purple cover of Speed King, and it's one of the best Deep Purple covers I've ever heard. Really, really awesome. Power, aggression, it's got everything. This first album just really kicks major ass.
It's funny you said that. I tend to skip Speed King when I get to it.
Yeah. No, I mean, so some covers
Good
just aren't
song.
for everybody, but this one just, I mean, this whole album from top to bottom is killer. I even, I play guitar. I've been playing guitar for about 30 years, and I did a few of the riffs off here, and Chainbreaker is one of my favorite songs of all time. It's really it's the second track here. Chainbreaker is just such a great track. Awesome, awesome power metal. And that's number 10. Fair.
They definitely were heavily influenced early on with that Judas Priest sound. You know, I know the singer, you know, really has his Rob Halford cadence about him, and then I know kind of on the later albums he kind of came into his own ways, right, and got his own kind of style and kind of veered out of the Halford-esque things. So I think if I were to go down the Primal Fear route, I'd probably lean into more of the later albums where he did find his own style, so to speak. So that's kind of where I am with Primal Fear. I know I had a good buddy who's just a huge, massive fan of them, and he's always trying to get me to be more of a fan. And you know, I kind of was telling him, you know, as well, where I'm more into the later albums where he did find his style, so to speak, because it is hard to listen to that and not hear Rob Halford, not hear the Halford style going on there. But nonetheless, great pick as well. It's obviously hugely meaningful to you. So that is that. And I guess I might as well take it away here. I'm next. I don't need to introduce myself. And it's interesting, this band already came up. So I think I'm just going to keep my order that I have mine in. I don't have mine in any sort of order, nothing. It's kind of just my 10 not in order. And to go along with Jack's pick is the huge toss-up with Warlock, although I generally find all the 4 Warlock albums to be great. So it's kind of just a matter of which one your preference is to. So I actually did pick True as Steel over the Triumph and Agony, although I could have easily, you know, if we do this next week, I could have easily picked Triumph of Agony. So it's kind of just a matter of maybe this specific day, or, you know, this this specific day or week I was more into this one. But I find True as Steel maybe just a little bit more for me. It was the couple albums before, I believe it's 81 on this one. With True as Steel 83 or something like that, but 81. But yeah, I kind of just, you definitely could choose Triumph of Steel, but I am choosing to pick True as Steel here. A ton of great songs on this one. Mr. Gold, Fight for Rock, True as Steel. Yeah, just pretty well a great listen all the way through. There might be one, I think there's one, maybe two slow songs. So there's no skippers on this album, so to speak. Maybe the one slower song if that's not for you, but generally they're a full on rocking on this album. So this would be my essential Warlock. If you don't know Warlock, this would probably be the one to check out, or Jack's pick.
Is that the Metal Mind reissue?
This is actually from like a box set. Like they issued a little box set, and I figured, well, I might as well just get this box set here as opposed to driving myself crazy trying to get them all individually. I would prefer to own individual, but in that case, it's not like a huge deterrent or anything. Actually, I found that they when they did reissue these for that box set, they kind of mastered the sound and made the sound a little bit better. Well, just kind of louder, right, sort of thing, but. Here nor there, that's a whole nother discussion in itself. Remasters and all those kind of things, that's a whole nother discussion right there, right? So we'll go ahead and get Steve to go next with his next pick.
I'll just chime in because it's such a killer album. You've got Igloo on the Moon, man, that's a closer. I love that closer. And Midnight in China, Love in the Danger Zone. It was so hard for me to pick one Warlock album, so I reckon all of them are pretty much equal standing.
Yeah, well, actually, I had all my whole list set, and it wasn't just until about half an hour, before the show that I realized I didn't actually finalize my Warlock yet. I had just left it open, and I was going to force myself to make. Well, it's going to be crunch time. I have to pick something, so it really was that tight of a crunch where, okay, I can't leave this open anymore. I am going to have to make a decision here. So. But maybe we'll go ahead here with Steve and his next pick.
All right. Well, on the subject of creator, I had Extreme Aggression on my list, and I opted to go with my next one, which was the follow-up to Extreme Aggression, and that is Coma of Souls. And when I heard this album, it blew my mind. People of the Lie and Coma of Souls, and I think I played the cassette on the Greyhound when I was living in Vancouver and had to take the bus into Kelowna. And I played that tape till it was so jammed in my Walkman at the time that there was no more pens or fixing it anymore. And and we went on to do a cover of People of the Lie in my band at the time. And just another awesome epic production. And they really stepped up their game with the production on that one, So Coma of Souls, creator, definitely on my list.
Absolutely, they were definitely firing on all cylinders at that point. The couple of first albums were extreme, influential to black and extreme metal in general, black death metal, any kind of extreme metal. Those first couple albums, and then they kind of figured out what they were doing and what kind of sound they were going for in general. And I think at that point they had full on hit their stride. They knew exactly what they were doing. They got into the studio with, exactly knew what they were doing.
They had the formula. They dialed it in on extreme, and by Coma of Souls, it took off, And at that time, if I recall, metal was making a major transition too. There was, the grunge era was coming in, and the guitars were being taken out, and the drop tuning was coming, and the rap influence. And that album in that time really stood out, so yeah, it kept the metal going, and they just went from there. And now, there's the Metallica of Germany for sure.
That is a good point that you did make, that where maybe some of the other bands were getting influenced by other things that were going on, and Creator just basically said a big, F you to saw what was going on and say, hey, we're coming hard here, right? So that is a good point that you bring up there. So definitely a great pick. I'm going to assume all of us are familiar with that, and definitely a great pick.
I find one thing about Creator, they're still bringing out some good albums. I thought the Enemy of God was awesome. Saw that concert. They played over here in Australia back in 2016 maybe, or not too sure of the date. But yeah, they've still got the goods. Same with Anthrax. Just one of those bands that just keeps
I
delivering.
think at one point in every night, once I've got my home and I put on Satan Is Real, and that riff in that song, it sends me. And I don't know why, but it's in fucking insane. If you're familiar with that. Awesome band.
Absolutely. Yeah, I pretty well got all of the Creator albums, so yeah, I'm definitely fairly familiar with all the new Creator as well, and yeah, they're definitely still bringing it quite hard. Yeah, it's we're glad that they're still around, leading the charge here for the old school, thrash. So it's good that they're still around doing the thing.
I don't know if I could say this, but if any of you guys have had the opportunity, which you probably have, to see Creator live, I've seen him 4 or 5 times, and I still have one major issue, and that Millie and his political rants in between songs drives me nuts. But the music keeps me there, but that guy just goes and goes and goes, man. Wow. But hey, he's made his mark. Respect.
Yeah, he's definitely aged like a fine wine here. His voice is still there. He's still an aggressive guy. So, yeah. And I think we'll get Jack here to go next with his next pick.
Yeah, well, since we're talking about Creator, it was difficult when I was thinking about them because clearly they're such a huge and influential band on every metalhead around the globe. So trying to pick something out of the catalog is pretty difficult because a lot of people respect everything they're doing up until now. Personally, I really stick to the earlier period. And as much as I loved Extreme Aggression when it came out as an album, I perhaps listened to it a little more than the others. Perhaps I'm trying to process it in my mind why it's dropped in my want to hear lists, but I listen to Pleasure to Kill just as much and I still rate that album above it, so maybe I just prefer the earlier stuff, so that's hard to say. But here we are, Pleasure to Kill. What can you say about the album? That Riot of Violence is still played, Pleasure to Kill is still played in the live sets. It's just a blitzing album from start to finish. I really like their first album too. You can hear the Slayer influence. Tracks like Bone Breaker is amazing. But talking about, Pleasure to Kill, I think that one just stormed the barn a bit. What can you say? Yeah, if you can get the nowadays you get it with Flag of Hate, which is also a brilliant EP. They're just a band, like you said. Millie's just such a presence. He does get a bit political at times. But the sound, particularly on Pleasure to Kill, it was very, very raucous, but very clear. I think that was one of the Ventor's drums. And one thing I noticed about German bands is they do love their rotor drums, and they always sound really good too. Sodom, I'm going to talk about them later. They also feature the rotors, I believe. So yeah, it's brilliant stuff. Great headbanging things.
Definitely influential to all the bands that came after with extreme metal in general. I know even those first couple albums, Endless Pain and that one can be seen as, kind of precursors to black and death metal. So you're right up there, obviously, with that pick. So
yeah. Can't say a lot more about it. It's just a thundering album. What can you say? Flag of Hate on top of it, and it's just pretty much a no-brainer.
These are full-on relentless albums, non-stop, just full-on in your face, pounding your ears with pleasure, of course. Pleasure. Yeah, I think that's that. Everyone's chimed in with what they might want to say about that album, and then we'll go ahead and get Dave to do his next pick. Or
My next album doesn't need any introduction, either does the band. Going Gamma Ray, Insanity and Genius. Like I love all Gamma Ray albums. Oh, not the later ones. They're going a little bit different than what I like, but definitely this one for me would be my essential pick for a German power metal. Just love Kai Hansen in general, and yeah, like Ralph Schubert on vocals, moved on to Primal Fear, so it's a bit of a winning combination in my eyes. Yeah, I love this one, Insanity and Genius.
it's definitely a great pick, and I'm glad that Gamma Ray did show up on the list because yeah, those first 3-4 albums are superb. Before they kind of went into before they added some symphonic elements and things like that, right? Before that started becoming popular. So yeah, those first albums are great. So it's great that someone did get Gamma Ray up on here in some sort of fashion. That's the album before was quite progressive and experimental, and then the third album here, isn't that that's their third album, and then their third album they kind of veered her back into more of a metal route. But yeah, it's a great combination. Ralph is a great singer. He has a really cool vibe and cadence about his singing. It's quite. I know Kai came from Halloween, so it's easy to make those comparisons between Gamma Ray and Halloween. But in actuality, I'm not really seeing too much of a comparison in the bands. I think they have their own sounds, right? And I felt like Ralph was a big part of differentiating the sounds between them and Halloween or them and Blind Guardian and things like that. So yeah, I definitely am a fan.
Yeah, I dig the Gamma Ray.
They're awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I did consider them a little bit. Yep, absolutely. I got some of their early material is really good, like Somewhere Back in Time, Somewhere Out in Space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that one's 97, 95.
That was
Yeah,
the first
yeah.
album
And
that I got into.
the one before that one, I can't recall the title of it.
Land of the
Also
Free.
really good.
Maybe?
I know me. I make I make little work playlists for things that I jam at work, and for the past month or so, I just had Sigh No More, the album before that one, just going here for the last couple of months, and I just really fell in love with it, just hearing it over and over, daily for the work. So I'm really in tune with that album here recently, and yeah, so it's cool that they could make a spot here on the list. Obviously being pretty influential and essential to German in general, so that's why we're here. And we'll get Dave here to go with his next pick.
So Steve was talking about Lonesome Crow as his first pick, and I love the Scorpions. I love all eras of the Scorpions, and they've been around for like 50 years at this point. But one of the albums from the Scorpions that really excites me is their second album, actually, Fly to the Rainbow.
Yes.
It was the first album with Uli.
Uli.
And the guy is just an amazing guitarist, very Hendrix influenced. And the other thing that you got to understand about this album is that it's a short album, but and there's a lot of good riffs on it. But Klaus's singing and his melodies are just unbelievably good on this album. This album really doesn't get talked about a lot. It's not super heavy, but it's just his vocal melodies just do it for me every time, and they're just absolutely gorgeous here. Songs like They Need a Million, Fly People Fly, This Is My Song, and of course, Fly to the Rainbow is just a really great song also, the title track. Speedy's Coming is kind of more of a hard rock kind of thing, but just this album's so great, and nobody really ever talks about it. I don't think it gets enough credit. Just wonderful, wonderful stuff. Awesome.
I gotta say, buddy, that album, by far, like one of epic proportion that nobody's heard of. It took me years to find the vinyl copy. It's hanging in my jam room. Fly to the Rainbow, Ollie Roth. It can't be touched.
Yeah, it's just
Awesome.
an amazing album.
Amazing.
That's yeah, no, I know. We Scorpion was mentioned earlier, and you did say that that's more of that psychedelic sound. Uli was bringing his psychedelic influences, and it's definitely a unique kind of psychedelic rock, hard rock, metal mix, kind of all three. Before they later got into the arena rock, and I don't know if anyone's going to chime in, but if not, I'll go ahead with my next pick. And I kind of just flipped my order because I knew I was going to be going next, and so I might as well keep the Scorpions topic going. And what the hell, phone ringing? Anyway, and then I'm going to go ahead with my next pick. And I tend to like the more later, a big arena rock type sound. After Uli had left. And so I think I'm going to, my essential would be Blackout. We got Now, Arizona, things like that. So this would definitely be probably my favorite Scorpions. We got that big arena rock sound, the great cover here. Everyone's going to be fairly familiar with Scorpions at this point. If you're probably watching the show, I would be pretty hard pressed to think that someone is not familiar with Scorpions. So I think everyone's pretty familiar with this album in general. Probably don't need to talk about it too much in terms of everyone's fairly familiar with it, but still, even though the sense that everybody is familiar with it, it's still a great album that is going to have to be talked about or essential for these kind of sorts of lists. So even though it is kind of mainstream, it's still got to be up there for me personally. So that's why I had to pick that, even though I was kind of tossing between. Obviously, Scorpions has such a huge discography, is such a huge body of work that at that point someone could be picking almost any kind of Scorpions album before they got a little later on. But at this point, this is the one that kind of speaks to me here. I kind of like those big arena rock sound and productions, and this had everything going on with all that kind of stuff, and yeah, great stuff.
Dude, we could have done a thing just on the Scorpions with their discography. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You know
True.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I have them all on my list. You know what I mean? Like honorable mention to every Scorpions album.
I agree.
I even love some of the mid '90s ones where he was bringing that. Well, the guitarist can chime in. When they add that the guitarist vocal effect when they do that.
Face the Heat, the talk box.
Yep.
The talk box, right? I like when he's does the talk box stuff, right? So that's cool stuff.
I think that was Tease Me, Please Me.
Yeah, I love that. Taxman Woman, I love that. I love that album. So I could have probably easily picked that, but it might have been a little controversial. So I was like, okay. Cool. Okay, I think we'll go, Steve, with your next pick here. And if you are getting pressed for time, Steve, just let us know. And then just let us know you are pressed for time. But if not, if you're enjoying yourself, or if you can stay on a little bit longer, we'd love to keep you going here.
Well, guys, it's been awesome. Unfortunately, I'm at work. I'm sitting in my customer's driveway doing this, and I got the windows open and speakers going, and people are walking by going, "Who's talking to who here?" Anyway, but yeah, I got to get going. So I'm going to give you my next pick, and then I'm going to, just give you what I listed, because I had to scratch and switch, and I was like, "Oh, he mentioned that, and I mentioned that," but I'll give you my next pick. Destruction. Cracked Brain, 90s.
Oh, wow.
They came out, they brought another guitarist, because they were always a three-man unit, and they had such epic things going on with, Butcher and Infernal and great early albums. But when Cracked Brain came out, it was like they stepped it up, and the production was there, and they brought some stuff. And you know what? To this day, Destruction sits on my top 10 thrash bands. And before that album, I was like, take it or leave it. There were some good tunes, Reject Emotion and Curse the Gods and stuff like that from early albums were really good. But album wise, it was all the same, but Cracked Brain, definitely influence, and it's still on my daily playlist. And if I can just go through my list before I take off, I'll give you what I picked for my German bands. I started off with the Scorpions, Lonesome Crow. Then we've already heard, but Creator, Extreme Aggression, that's definitely in there. Then I got my Destruction, Crack Brain, Scorpions, Slide of the Rainbow. Thanks, Dave. Yes, I had that as well. I got some Rammstein in there with the Du Hast album. I can't pronounce the name of the album, Schwash Schwash or something. Great album, because every song on there was like driving industrial, and it was like heavy guitars. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I don't even care if I can't understand it, because when they did the English version of Du Hast, it sucked. I was like, it sounds better in German. Anyway, we got Accept, Balls to the Wall, of course, Scorpions, Animal Magnetism. I mean, The Zoo, Animal Magnetism. I mean, come on. Big songs. And then I got Rage from the 80s, Perfect Modern Man. Can you hear the wind? The vocals and just the melodies, and fast, awesome, wicked tunes. And I have to say, Halloween, The Walls of Jericho.
Yeah.
What an album for speed metal from Germany in the 80s. It was like nothing I'd ever heard, you know, Gogar and Starlight. Oh, ripping it. I was playing it the other night, and what memories attached, good vibes, good, influential, and they're still kicking it, you know. Those guys never gave it up. Wicked album. Well,
yeah, that's
brothers.
killer, Dave. Killer stuff. The new Halloween's pretty good too, yeah?
Yep.
It's killer. It's an already classic album.
I can't believe they got all the vocalists together. That's
the
amazing.
Skyfall single blew my mind when I first heard it. Absolutely blew my mind.
Steve, you definitely caught us off guard with that Cracked Brain. I think that's going to be probably a controversial pick of this one here. Yeah, I definitely was not expecting that as well. I know they had
great album.
The singer stepped out for that album, so a lot of people were confused by that album. But the other guys handled it well. They I thought they put a commendable album out. I actually own it here. I'm not going to scramble and get it, but yeah, no, I own it. It is a great album. I think a lot of people do kind of dismiss it just for the fact that the original singer wasn't on the album there.
And the guitar player, Mike, was gone too.
Right, yeah. It's definitely a commendable album that they were able to produce, that they were able to make such a great album despite those lineup changes. And it is an overlooked album, so it's great that you did mention it.
Come on, they do a metal version of My Sharona. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's good fun.
Yeah.
My Sharona. Fuck yeah. Okay, brothers, I gotta go, man. I fucking enjoyed it. I wish I had more time, but I'm a working guy. I gotta get shit going done. It's Friday night here, and I got shit to do tomorrow. So, cheers, metal to all of you. Thanks for your picks. I will be looking into stuff that you guys mentioned that I haven't checked out. Gamma Ray, Warlock, stuff I know about, but I never really checked it out. So, thank you, and fucking metal forever.
Thanks for showing up. Thanks for giving us your time. We all appreciate that. You know, you're definitely, adding to the conversation. And yeah, great. Thanks for showing up. And you know, we all understand that you do have to take off. So yeah, thanks. And we'll have to get you on for another show. And yeah, see you next time.
Enjoy your night, Dave.
Hint. Merciful Fate. I'm there. Bring it.
Nice.
All right, duly noted. Yeah, we'll be doing a Merciful Fate ranking here pretty soon. Absolutely. I'll have to get you on.
Steve's out. I gotta go.
Okay, peace. Okay, we'll move the show along here, and we'll get Jack to go next with his next pick.
Yeah. So moving on from Destruction and the early thrash, I flashed up the Sentence of Death EP. That's for me, I love the early thrash sound, but another pioneering sound from then, which has been very influential, I think, you know, on, you'd probably say, black metal scene would be Sodom, of course, from their EP In the Sign of Evil, but onwards to Obsessed by Cruelty, which is what can I say? It's a filthy album. It really is. Death Like Silence, Lateralism, Real, I can never pronounce that one. Brandish Scepter, oh man, I just absolutely adore this album. It's so great, right to the end, to the Volcanics, yeah, it's just the Fall of Majesty Town. Oh, I love it. It just hit me like a ton of bricks, as Metal Church would say. Definitely, it really had an impact on me. It was a terrible sound, I thought, but it was brilliant too at the same time. It's just, yeah, it's amazing. I love Tom. I love Witch Hunter's drumming. It's amazing. That match with Tom's voice, it's just absolutely filthy. It really is. I love the early Sodom. I was very tempted to pick Persecution Mania because obviously it's such a big popular album, and it's also a very essential album. But I think for the influence that it has played out, definitely the early Sodom, In the Sign of Evil. You can get them both on a disc now, I think, probably on the same disc even. In fact, yes, I have it here on the same disc. So yeah, Sodom, In the Sign of Evil / Obsessed by Cruelty. You should go out and get that on a CD at least. Have a physical copy in your hand. Physical copies are always great. I mean, vinyl's lovely, but the price of vinyl these days, if you're trying to catch up, it's crazy. It's out there.
It's
I
still
paid $30 for the new
out.
Halloween LP. That was insane.
Definitely a
What was that?
superb album, and I'm gonna try not to touch too much on it because I got Sodom on my list, and my Sodom pick might be a little controversial, and I was definitely leading toward. I was kind of tossing and turning between a couple. Persecution Mania, and specifically, you had mentioned that one, so we'll have to see if that appears on anyone's list here coming up, or some other Sodom. So maybe we'll kind of hold off on that, just to Sodom might appear a few more times. So and then yeah, great. I think we'll go next here with Dave next pick.
Just looking at my pile now, I could might as well jump to an easy one, in my opinion. Keepers Part 2 for me. Like I said, everyone's got their own Halloween opinions. Like I said, even the latest albums, something different again. So, but for me, yeah, Wars of Jericho. I love the Judas EP, but Keepers 2 for me. Just Eagle Fly Free, all those tracks, they're great. And I Want Out, probably one of the first songs I got into from Halloween. So yeah, that's my pick. Definitely Keepers
Awesome.
2.
Absolutely classic.
Essential.
Yeah, I Want Out, what a tune. That's just, yeah, killer.
Used to mates played in a band back in the early 90s, and they used to cover I Want Out. They used to cover Scorpions' Blackout. So yeah, we had fun times back then.
That's definitely an essential Halloween at this point. As you're saying, they mostly play a lot of those songs still live, so that's obviously for a reason, right? They're still playing all those songs live.
Yeah, definitely. And even the Derris era albums, I could have chose one of those as well. The Dark Ride comes to mind, would be one of my favorite from the Andy Derris period.
Yeah, that's a brilliant album.
I know me specifically, I'm probably more of a Darius guy. Andy Darius guy, I kind of just think his voice just has that natural rasp that fits to Halloween well. But these earlier albums are obviously essential to what was going on with Halloween in general and what was to come, and help them figure out what was going on in the future with their sounds and everything. So Keeper of the Keys 1 and 2 are just staples in the metal scene in general. Cool. And I guess we'll get David Biggs here to go next here with his next pick.
Okay, so I think we're on number 7, right? So number 7, can't talk about German metal without talking about the originators of pirate metal, and that would be Running Wild. This was the first Running Wild CD that I got, and it blew me away when I first heard it. Blazing Stone, Lone Wolf, Slavery, Little Big Horn. My favorite track off this album is what is it? It's White Mask. It's got that Iron Maiden-esque galloping. Just I like Rock and Roll's vocals. They're really great. The rhythm section is very heavy. I think this was the bassist from Gravediggers. Now this is the bassist that's on here is the bassist now on Gravedigger. I think his name is Jens. Just great stuff. And the true innovators of pirate metal. And you can't talk about German metal without pirate metal. And they're still going strong now. They just put out a new album. I haven't gotten it yet, but I've heard some tracks off it, and I'm gonna get it. But I love these guys. I love every album actually.
Yeah, the new album, I'm digging that. That's sounding pretty good.
And they've been doing it since they've been around almost 40 years at this point. These power metal guys, 40 years. Not really big here in the States, but I think over in Europe they're much bigger. Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, Running Wild, what a band! They had big influence on me too. Big influence. And Blazing Stone is a great album.
Yeah, just the speed and the power and the storytelling. That's a big hook for me. If it's like almost like a concept album, and if it's the album tells a story, every song kind of fits in with the other ones. A lot of Rolf's lyrics are historical. He talks about Billy the Kid and Little Bighorn. So there's a lot of historical stuff. So it's a lot like Iron Maiden, where Bruce has a lot of lyrics that have to do with history. And so I think Rolf kind of does that too. And it's just very interesting.
Yeah, he really stepped out on that album, didn't he, with his lyrics, and like Little Bighorn and Slavery.
Yeah, he definitely does his research on all this kind of history, this pirate history, just kind of history in general. Yeah, he definitely does his research, and the lyrics are great. The topics are great. Fits well with metal. So at that point, Blazing Stone, the band's the band's pretty well hit their stride. Rock and Roll knew exactly what he was doing at that point, and obviously switching over, those first couple albums, and then switching over more into a different direction. So at that point, he's in a full swing of really liking what his band is doing and the direction that his band was going at that time. And it definitely comes across on all these albums. And Running Wild is definitely one of the top favorite bands for me as well. I own every Running Wild. Even some of the later albums that people don't like, I like them. And you guys did mention the newer one just came out. I haven't had a whole lot of time with the newer album. It seems like it is one of those kind of mid-tempo-y albums. People were saying that he doesn't like to do super fast songs anymore for whatever reason. I know the guy is an absolute machine. If anyone's ever seen him live or sees clips of him live, he is pretty well on par with James Hetfield in terms of talent. He is riffing, he's doing the guitar, he's singing all at the same time. He is an absolute machine. I don't even know how he's actually saying all those lyrics that fast. Obviously a lot of the things they play live is all his faster material, fan favorite material, and he is an absolute machine watching him live. It's incredible. He's just as talented as James Hetfield. Absolutely.
Yeah. Live, there's some great live stuff on YouTube. The Deathful Glory tour is on there, and that's a great. If you've got some time, check that one out if you want to see Rolf's live performance. And he is a machine.
Absolutely. And yeah, Blazing Stone. It's going to be no secret here, with me mentioning Running Wild is one of my favorite bands. So I didn't want to fill my list with running wild, so I did just want to pick one, and figuring out which one was extremely difficult. I'm going to get into later why I chose what specific album, so I'll save that for later. And it does look like it is my next pick, and I think at this point this band has came up between all of us already, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and get this out of the way and save some of the juicier stuff for later. So I did pick Extreme Aggression as well. You know, those first couple albums, Endless Pain, Pleasure to Kill, are kind of more on that extreme side, kind of more influential to the early black and death scenes. And at this point, moving into Extreme Aggression, there is still that rawness to them, but they're also refining it a tad, maybe adding a bit more of melodies in certain areas just to maybe make it more pleasurable in certain aspects. And so, that's at this point, they were kind of just refining it a tad. And I think this is probably that in-between album where the first ones before it were raw. And then at this point, they got probably a little bit more money to produce these albums. So it kind of gave them a chance to kind of take the rawness out of it, although it's still very raw. So this is probably that in-between album where Steve had mentioned Coma of Souls next. So, and then Coma of Souls is a pretty well produced sounding album. So this is probably that in-between album where it is, I forget the word I was going to say, but it's that in-between album where it appeals to the early Black Death guys, but then it also appeals to the normal thrashers, right? So this is that album where it's in between, appeals to pretty well anyone involved in kind of metal, extreme metal. So that's definitely why I would have to choose this. And the fact that it's came up on a few other lists here is no surprise at this point.
Yeah. Some Pain Will Last. You talk about the melodies on Extreme Aggression. That's a standout track. Absolutely, it's a nice melodic, mid-paced track. I quite enjoy that one. Bringer of Torture is another one of my favorites from Extreme Aggression.
Yeah, I figured I'd just get that away because at this point everyone's mentioned Creator, so I'm not going to save that for my number one or some of my last picks since we've already talked about that. So I think we'll just go ahead and move along here with Jack's next pick.
All right, well, we're just going to swing right back to Running Wild. Port Royal. Look, this wasn't their first pirate album, which it was actually just before that one. But Port Royal was my actual first Running Wild experience, dating back to soon after it was released, picking up the vinyl in a store, going to a mate's house, partying on for the night, left my vinyl in the car. No, hang, that's a different story. That was my Sodom story, actually. Yeah, it's Persecution Mania. I left that one in the car and it turned into a ski jump the next day. Running Wild, however, was a different story. I got that one home and I played side one and it was perfect. And side two had a big scratch in it and I had to take it back to the store. And they were really cool. They exchanged it for me. But I never got it again for many, many years until I got it on CD, probably sometime in the 90s. It was a long, long wait, but I absolutely adored side one of Port Royal. And I was thrilled to finally get it in my possession. Of course, compact disc had taken over as far as the media that you were buying in the 90s. So I have it on compact disc now. But yeah, it's a classic pirate album. From the intro for the walking in, of course, you hear the boots and haha, laughing, where are you in Port Royal? Of course, breaks into Port Royal. And just, wow, what can I say? Raging Fire, Into the Arena is a great track. The instrumental, the Indian instrumental, the Shaititan, the Native American one. Can't pronounce it. Can anyone pronounce it?
No. Strength tees or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but what a great instrumental. Well, that was possibly one of my favorite instrumentals of all instrumentals. I just absolutely love that instrumental, and the bass line is just carries you on. It's just a great instrumental. Conquistadors, the big hit from the album. probably watched the video a lot more times than I actually listened to it, because I believe that was the first track on side 2. Yeah, and going on, it closes with Calico Jack, of course. But so it's just a brilliant album. I think if you're only going to get Running Wild album, I would say get Port Royal. That's just possibly my favorite album of theirs, but I could be biased being my first one, as it often is the case.
Absolutely. Conquistadors, Calico Jack, that's pretty well top to bottom, an incredible album, you know. Running Wild is one of my favorite bands, so that's definitely, you put her on and you're taking a full-on pirate ride with his lyrics, his topics. Yeah, great stuff. I could have easily put that in my list, and it very well could be.
It's quite unique that they've, you know, created their own brand, and then since then there have been other people that have decided to pick up on the pirate metal, like the Hailstorm and whatnot, like going on with it. Not a big fan of those bands, but Running Wild definitely nailed the pirates for me.
Okay, right. You know, since you did mention Hailstorm, I like Hailstorm. I think they're doing their own flavor because they are adding that guitar element, right? They got the dueling guitars and the guitar, so I think they're adding their own unique elements. And I think some of the other bands maybe are, you know, probably stuck doing either what Hailstorm's doing or what Running Wild's doing. So I think those probably are two of the topper bands doing that kind of stuff right now. But you know, here nor there, it's probably a whole different discussion right there. But yeah, great stuff. And hopefully we see some more Running Wild here in the future. I'm not sure. I can't remember who's picked what at this point. But okay, cool. Maybe we'll keep her moving along here and do Dave's next pick.
Yeah, Running Wild, such a big catalog those guys have. I bought everything up till Masquerade. I think it might have been mid-90s, but and such a heavy influence as well. So it's funny. Biggs went Blazing Stone, Jack's gone Port Royal. I can't go past Pile of Skulls, to be honest. I just love all the tracks. It's really got the pirate treasure thing going on there, Treasure Island, and my CD's got a bonus track actually with the White Buffalo. I don't think the vinyl or the cassette had the bonus track. So yeah, I'm a like everyone, big Running Wild fan, but for me, it's been Pile of Skulls all the way. Had it on cassette, had it on CD, never owned the vinyl. I'm not a big vinyl person, but yeah, love the band, big influence, like we talked about. I think there's a band getting around now called Blazing Stone, actually, power metal act. So yeah, Running Wild's definitely left their mark on the scene, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, Pile of Skulls has got the epic Treasure Island at the end. I used to play that to my son all of the time because as a good laugh, he loved it. The pirate,
Love it.
the great story, Long John Silver.
Yeah, and that's one of those albums that I think does have a lot of tracks on it, but it doesn't deter from it being that great because all the tracks are great. There is no skippers on that kind of album, and I believe that one was 1991. And yeah, at that point, you know, Running Wild's a full-on in the swing of things. They every album, I think, you know, around you know, pretty well from when they started to kind of the mid 90s, they kind of had a couple little, you know, maybe people would see as maybe skipper albums, but you know, right through the mid 90s, heading into the 2000s, Running Wild was firing on all cylinders, I believe, you know, and you know, with the bass player switching back and forth between that, you know, later he joined Gravedigger, so that's kind of a cool connection that those two bands have. You know, you always see Jens if you watch videos or whatever, you know, you see him in Running Wild and Gravedigger, so it's kind of cool that there's a connection there as well.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the track Roaring Thunder from Pile of Skulls. I just absolutely love that track.
Yeah,
Possibly one of my standout Running Wild songs.
definitely. Yeah, Fistful of Dynamite. Oh, there's too many to the list. Black Wings of Death, Like a Whirlwind, Crushing Over the Sea. There's too many.
Sticks in your head.
But that album's definitely my essential pick for Running Wild.
Yeah, rock and roll's the master at these really catchy choruses, right, without being cheesy about it. So he's definitely a master at that. Yeah, great stuff. And actually, would you guys consider Running Wild to be like a speed band, or like what kind of like would you consider them to be like a thrash band, a speed band, a power band, or?
I think at the beginning they were almost black metal. That first album, Brandon and Exiled, I think, was almost black metal-ish in approach, and then they became a power metal band.
Right. Well, yeah, the first one was Purgatory, and then the
Oh,
second one.
Purgatory, yeah.
The second one was Exiled, and yeah, Exiled. Speaking of just those two specifically, I would prefer Exiled, Exiled to Branded and Exiled. So I would prefer that one, but still both great stuff. Obviously the first one's going to be a big landmark for them in general, moving forward. All right, cool. Yeah, and obviously I haven't made my Running Wild pick yet, so we'll probably get some more Running Wild discussion in here later, and we'll go ahead with David's next pick.
All right. So when I first heard this band, what stuck out to me was the vocals. The vocals were really like just blew my mind because they were just so OTT, like over the top. Okay, and this band was Gravedigger, and this album is I believe it's from '93. It's The Reaper. I just love all the riffs on this album. The riffs are great. The production is great. It's very loud. I'm a big fan of really great drum production. And if the drums don't sound good on an album, I am probably gonna listen to it once and shelve it. But this one it's just loud, and the drums are just amazing. The rhythms and everything. So Chris's vocals are an acquired taste. When you first hear them, it's like Udo on steroids. That's the only way I can describe it. And this album, you've got Wedding Day, you've got the actual song The Reaper, you've got Right On, you've got Legion of the Lost. It's just an amazing album all the way through. Very heavy. And like I said, Chris's vocals are an acquired taste. So it may take a couple listens before someone can really get into Gravedigger, because it's just they're so over the top, and it's just a lot of occult references and a lot of talking, very heavy metal. So this is essential German heavy metal for me.
Yeah,
Love it.
that's a good album. It's a good album with Shadows of the Moonless Night and Ruler. Brilliant tracks.
Yeah.
On top of the ones you named, of course.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff.
Very awesome, like rhythmic pounding type, production on all these Gravedigger albums, all the later Gravedigger albums, right? That huge, big production, the pounding rhythms, right? That you were saying that you enjoy with the drums and that. And I believe that was their big return, actually, right? They attempted a couple of kind of, they shifted directions, trying to go maybe a little more mainstream. I think the record label wanted them to try to get some hits and things like that, and they shifted direction a bit. Those last couple albums, people try to just totally ignore those albums. Forgetting the names here at the top of my head.
I think it was the before this they changed their name to Digger, and it was so they kind of went a little glammy. It was like their version of Cold Lake. That's what I equated to. So I'm trying to think of what the name of the album was.
Like Let's Start a War, and then Digger did the other one, and so that was their big return. They actually went away for I think 86 or 88, and then they
87?
didn't. Yeah, and then they didn't come back for 5. Yeah, I believe that album is 92. The Reaper is 92. So they didn't actually do anything for 4 years. I'm actually still curious to these days what Chris was doing for those 4 or 5 years. Again, but then out of nowhere, Gravedigger returns with a fresh, totally different sound, and they've basically been on fire ever since. I think definitely nailing these big productions, and still keeping that speed aspect to the band in general. So Gravedigger at this point is firing at all cylinders. They kept that speed, that heavy, that really great sound to them. And that's really cool that was their big return. And it's always interested me, what was he doing for that 4 or 5 years that nothing was going on?
I think he has his own publishing company, and I think maybe he was working with that. Flying Dolphin, I think it's called.
That's pretty well. That would. It's almost like their. That would be like considered almost like their second career or their second wave, so to speak, right? Like because they would have cut off at that Digger album, and then here they are coming back. Well, almost like their second life, so to speak, right? And fortunately, they've been able to sustain that second life. It's great news for all metal fans.
That was their first
well,
modern era album.
I missed that. Sorry, what was that?
That was their first. I consider it the first modern era album.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess that's what I was trying to say. You know, kind of their. It gave birth to their second half of their career, so to speak, right? And
a dark start.
Yeah,
Very dark start.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, cool. I think this next pick is might be a little controversial, although the band in itself is not controversial. The pick might be. I know. I think a lot of people were probably thinking full-length albums, and when I was deciding what album to choose from this band, Sodom, it was a tough call because someone could put Agent Orange, Persecution Mania, Obsessed by Cruelty, and at that point I really just got thinking about the very first EP and In the Signs of Evil, and I was just thinking, I'm covering how that would be kind of my favorite or essential to them in terms of what it was influential to all the bands that came after. And yeah, this is extremely raw stuff right here. Fast, aggressive. You know, I always loved that song, Blasphemer, right? It always comes up. And I just thought, you know, even though this is just an EP, for whatever reason, I feel it's probably more influential to everything that came after for all the other bands, and Black, and this is probably definitely a leader for that early black metal wave, even though it's not technically black metal, but I think a lot of those black metal guys were highly influenced by this. So kind of for that reason alone, I am choosing this one. Yeah, even though it is that EP, but this is definitely a great place to start. It is raw. It might be a little hard to digest at first, but this is really great stuff.
Absolutely, Jamie. It's a brilliant pick. Yeah. I mean, Outbreak of Evil, Witching Metal. You know, it's a Blasphemer, as you said. Brilliant tracks. The sepulchral voice. They redid that album. I've got it not at hand. I didn't want to have too many CDs and vinyl stacked around me, but yeah, they re-recorded that album not long ago with Chris before he passed away. It was I quite enjoyed it actually, and they had the demo tracks on there. The Final Sign of Evil when it was in 2007.
Okay, you know, I'll be honest, I never checked that out. I'm not really a fan of these re-recordings. Again, that's probably a whole discussion all in itself. I'm good with a reissue, but a re-recording, I understand why bands do it for financial reasons and to get their publishing rights back in their hands, right? So then when all this stuff later appears on social media, they get the money for it as opposed to the old record labels. So I understand why a lot of these bands are re-recording things so they can get the money back in their hands, so to speak. But in general, I'm not a huge fan of these re-recordings. But you know, that's a whole nother discussion topic on its own, I would suppose.
Yeah, they did it pretty good, I thought. They were quite true to the sound, but you know, have a listen.
I'm sure it is quite well, and you know, I definitely will probably make note to check it out. Even though obviously what they recorded originally is going to be probably the more essential one in particular. But you know, it's definitely a good topic to bring that up as well, isn't it?
So many bands like Sodom, they bring out their Obsessed by Cruelty, In the Sign of Evil demos, and then finally, bang, Persecution Mania jumps out, and it's just like you sort of forget about the other two. But those other two are kind of what started the Persecution Mania. Reminds me a lot of Sepultura as well, with their two big albums, like Beneath the Remains. Like they started with Morbid Visions and the Bestial Devastation album, which listen to them now, they're very raw, very similar to Sodom's earlier albums. But yeah, a lot of bands that's how they just started, didn't they? Just with that really buzzy sound. But yeah, a few years later, wow, they're just bringing out some really good stuff.
Yeah, that is why I kind of chose that, because I kind of view that as probably the big inspiration or influence to maybe the early black metal scene. And you did touch on Sepultura there, and as well, I think they're kind of, those first couple albums are kind of viewed in that influential to the black scene or extreme metal in general. So I think for that kind of reason alone, I did kind of focus in more on that Ensign of Evil. Although I definitely wanted to get Persecution Mania in there somehow, but just very slight reasons, just based on the influential, essential aspect. I went with Ensign of Evil, although at this point Sodom produced some great albums early on, or still do now. So at that point, it's kind of just at that point it would just be everyone or you would come back to do a Sodom full album ranking, and that's where all this kind of stuff would really get discussed a little more in depth, and why certain albums, people connect with certain albums over other ones. You were saying once you heard Persecution Mania, you toss the other ones to the side, right? So all right, cool. So I guess we'll go next here with Big's next pick.
My next pick, so a lot of the bands that we've been talking about are very, very heavy. I'm going to go with more of a hard rock flavor. And I really love this guy. He's very cool guitarist, Axel Rudy Pell. He's put out like 20 albums since the late 80s. I think he started in 89 after he left Steeler. Not the Yngwie Steeler, it was another Steeler, a German Steeler, which was actually a really good band too. Not one of my top essential picks, but this album I really love. It's, just what I would define it as a stadium arena rock. It just, and again, it has really good drums. If it doesn't have the drums, again, I'm not interested, but the drum is really good. The production is really awesome. There's a lot of hooks. You've got Rob Rock on here, which he signed it. I met him 2005 at a concert, not an Axel Rudy Pell concert. He was playing in a band called Vice. I guess they did like a one-off show locally. So I got his autograph on this. I also got his autograph on an Avantasia CD, because he sang on Avantasia. But I love this album, Nasty Reputation. It's got I Will Survive on it, which isn't the disco song. It's actually a heavy metal song, hard rock song. My favorite song off this album is Wanted Man. The riff on that, it's just hard rock paradise for me. I love this album. And Rob Rock is a screamer, but he's got a lot of melody in his voice, which is really cool. So this is definitely a top pick for me. And I listen to this. This is in my car rotation all the time. I listen to CDs in my car. Obviously, you can't listen to LPs. So this is in my rotation all the time. Love this album. Excellent.
Great pick. I'm glad ARP came up on the discussion there. I became pretty in tune here with Axel Rudy Pell in the last couple of years. And great stuff. As soon as you bring that up, I think of Wildcat. I believe Wildcat's on that album, right? Great.
Oh, no, that was the first album.
Oh,
that's
right.
The first one with Charlie Hunn.
Right. Yeah, I'm getting mixed up, but great stuff on all the ARPs. Sometimes I even get a little confused on what singers were on which ones. I know someone mentioned what's the fellow's name there?
Johnny Jaley.
That was on the Malmsteen records.
Oh, Scott Soto.
Yeah, Scott Soto. Sometimes I even forget that Scott Soto was on which albums, which ones was he on, or which ones he wasn't. So sometimes I get a little confused because I think on those first 3 albums. He had a different singer on every different album, right? So that's definitely an interesting thing. But yeah, ARP is definitely a cool little cool guy. He kind of has his melodic, kind of majestic kind of things. Not quite psychedelic, more of like majestic, like almost like a fantasy majestic vibe about him.
He's a Richie Blackmore disciple. He really loves Richie Blackmore. I think he even like lives in a castle in Germany, just like Richie used to do or something. It's just, he's very much a Blackmore disciple, and they even cover on this album they cover "When a Blind Man Cries," which was a B-side to some early Deep Purple single, and they do actually a really great job. This is another great cover, another great Deep Purple cover. You know, we talked about Primal Fear before with Speed King. When a Blind Man Cries, it's a really great cover, a lot of emotion, and they just do a really fabulous job. Rob Rock is a great singer. I love the guy. I have all his solo albums. He was on Project Driver, I think, with Tony McAlpine.
All the Christian Pelletier albums.
Yeah, and Pelletier, yep. Those are great albums. Another great guitarist. All good stuff.
Yeah, I think that one, the production wise was probably getting a little influenced by like the glam scene, right? But he still had his own unique little flair to it. It definitely was a stand. It definitely wasn't as cheesy as some of the glam and hair metal stuff that was coming out. So that's definitely a cool start to his kind of solo career, even though it's a band, but still kind of a start to his solo career coming off Steeler. So that's definitely great. I'm glad that Axel Rudy Pell made its way onto someone's list. Yeah, great.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I haven't heard it.
Oh no, I believe that was '89. Like it kind of just squeezes in right into the before the '90s. I believe it's just '89. So you can understand the influence with the hair glam production, so to speak.
Yeah, check out his big hair.
And the album after didn't have that glam production at all. The album after has a totally different production mix to it, right? So, but still, nonetheless, a great start to his career. I still follow. It's hard to keep up with all the Axel Rudy Pell albums. I think he's probably got freaking like 14, 15 studio albums, so it's pretty hard to kind of know all those off by heart. A lot of the later ones are a lot of mid-tempo type stuff. Like pretty. It's almost like half the album are slow tunes, and the other half are kind of these super long-winded, majestic journeys.
Like a German version of Rainbow, pretty much.
That is a great thing about Axel Rudy Pell, even into his later years, is that he kind of just does these super long, majestic tunes. He takes you on a full ride. It might start out a little slow, then it kind of goes into a mid-tempo, then it kind of goes into an anthemic kind of stuff, and then he does his 3-minute majestic soloies, and then veers are back in, and next thing you know, you've been listening to a song for 10, 12 minutes, and you're like, yeah, it's pretty fucking good, right? But I guess we'll keep it going. My next pick, I believe this band has already brought up a few times. Steve brought up Cracked Brain, and I can't remember if anyone else has made their destruction picks, but I think my essential destruction will be Release from Agony. They had Infernal Overkill before, and another album before, and then that EP, that Sentence to Death EP that you showed earlier. And I think the great thing about Destruction is that they have that incredible razor guitar tone, that really that really razor guitar tone. And on Infernal Overkill, it sounds incredible. The only thing is the production's a little bit lacking. You maybe have to EQ it a bit to bring it up to standards, but it's still a great album in general. But I think kind of just for production value wise, they probably got a little bit more money to produce it, master it, mix it, all those kind of things, bring people in to make it more professional. And kind of for that reason alone, I would choose Release from Agony. from 87, I believe this one is. And, at that point, Destruction is a full-on still aggressive band. They're a thrash band. The production's great. All the songs are great. It's full-on aggressive sound. And that's definitely why I choose this one.
Yeah, it's a great album. Sign of Fear, absolutely killer. Unconscious Ruins. They've really got their sound together on that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty thrashy in general, fast. Maybe the album before might have been a little faster, but I think that one is pretty still aggressive. Definitely an essential Destruction to check out, and I think one of the best things about Destruction is just that guitar tone. They just have a killer guitar tone.
Yeah, they do. There's something about the early Destruction. It's very just that sound. It's a very Razor sound, isn't it? It's really good. The guitars. I didn't find that they recaptured that particularly well with their Reformation, and I haven't really clicked with anything they've put out. I mean, I bought the first few and listened to them a lot, but they just didn't stick with me. But the early Destruction absolutely is amazing.
Yeah, I know. I think it is specifically Inferno Overkill where it's just full on treble. Like I got to EQ it and just turn the treble right down just to level it out. So it's probably just a matter of probably their eardrums were shot from playing all live shows, and you get in the studio and they're just like their ears are ringing. So it's like, let's just turn up the treble.
Yeah, but it has Black Death on it, so I love that album. Yeah.
Cool. So you might as well keep it going. You're talking there, so you might as well get going with your next pick.
All right. Well, how about some more German? All right. I might bring something a little newer to the game. A band that really brought the black thrash sound back big time, and as probably many of us did, we bought albums because of the album covers. And one day in the 90s, I was looking through the CDs as you do, and came across this album cover. Disaster. Hellfire's Dominion. It's not their first album, so that's their third album, I think. Well, what can I say? It just blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. There's so many songs on it. They had this amazing medieval. They began as more of a black metal band, and they had this medieval atmosphere to what they were doing, which they brought forward through that. They have brought forward through their career. A lot of instrumental kind of pieces or build-ups to the tracks. It just absolutely knocked my socks off, and I was so impressed with this album that I went out and made a web page for them, and fan page. It's no longer on the web anymore, but it was absolutely mind blowing album. Just so many good songs on there, just from start to finish. I really would struggle to pull something out of it, but what they do have is they have Toto from Living Death, and I'll talk about Living Death later, come on for the track Metallized Blood. They have a few other guest performers too, but if you haven't heard this album, it really is a killer album. It's an amazing thrash album, really good. I cannot sing its praises much higher than I just have. It's the sound. It's a great recording. It's got the atmosphere. It's got the thrash. It makes you want to snap your neck. Definitely back when I had hair, I banged my head a lot to this album. It was a brilliant album.
Haven't heard that one, man, but I'll be sure to check it out. Definitely looks great.
Right. And what year was that album?
That was just Disaster. Hellfire's Dominion.
What year was that?
What year? I think it was 99. It was 90. Is it on here? I might need to put on some glasses to find that one.
Right. Oh, okay. So it might have just squeezed right into the 90s there. Okay. It's not something I'm super familiar with, but when you mentioned black thrash, it definitely gets you kind of it gives you an idea of what it's going to sound like, right? With that black thrash description, uh, really killer stuff. Where again, I'm not going to speak on the actual album. I've never heard it, but when you do mention black thrash, that definitely piques my interest in general.
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
I don't think of Germany when I hear the black thrash. If someone says black thrash, I don't think of German bands. But yeah, more just your thrash and your power for me for German. But no, I'll be the only death metal band I'm familiar with Germany would be Morgoth. But yeah, I'll be checking out Disaster. Thanks for that, Jay.
Yeah, 98 was the year, and yeah, the title looks the songs like "Thou Shalt Be King," "Hellfire's Dominion." You're getting a good picture of what they're coming out with here. Teutonic Steel. It's a cracker of an album. It really is. You got to hear it.
Oh, cool, interesting stuff, and I'm sure a lot of us will be writing that down, checking that out. I know I'm going to make a specific note to check that out, especially since you did include that term, black thrash. So anytime you can discover kind of a new black thrash sound, I'm all game for that.
Yeah,
So
well,
then-
it's killer. They changed vocalists after a couple of albums after this one, but the new singer, Satanic, he's really good. He really has kept the sound familiar to what the Occulto was doing with them before that. But the follow-up album from this one, the Tyrants of the Netherworld, that is also just, it's hard to pick a favorite almost between Hellfire and Tyrants. But yeah, I'd go with Hellfire because that was my first one. I think probably most people would possibly just inch in with Hellfire's Dominion as their favorite too, just at a guess, because they play Metalized Blood all the time. It's just such a an anthemic track. It really is. They're still going, still making albums.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, was that their first album?
No, it was their third, I believe. They had they started with was it the EP that came before it? They had was it the Force of Medieval Darkness? That was the full length that came before it. So it was their second full length. They had Stormbringer, the EP. That was what I was thinking of. Yeah, that was between their debut and Hellfire's. So by the time they came with Hellfires, they were firing all guns blazing. That was the sound that they've brought forward pretty much now. So they're a bit more black on the first one, a touch of Medieval Darkness, but yeah, Stormbringer, they were drifting towards what they were doing with Hellfires.
Oh, cool, good stuff. Well, sounds like it's good stuff anyway. And yeah, we'll veer back on track here, and we'll get Dave going with his next pick.
I've chosen a band. Probably not. I know it's everyone's favorite album of theirs, but it's one I just picked up in a secondhand flick rack once, just flicking through and come across Attack, The Secret Place. For me, this album has just got a great mixture of songs. You got your fast, your slow, your almost what can I say? Just a great mixture of tracks. I know the earlier albums are probably a little bit thrashier than this one, but this one's for me, The Secret Place. Yeah, this one's 95, I think. So they're getting probably their last studio album, I'd say, this one. So yeah, if you haven't heard Attack, there's one. They've got a few compilations as well, but yeah. No, really good stuff. Bit of a power, sort of speed type setup. Yeah, no, I love this one. I think for me, it's apart from your big German bands, I think Attack's definitely a top 10 for me.
I think I hadn't even realized that Attack was German, but yeah, no, I got this album. I believe this one's 92, and yeah, really cool kind of mix of that speed, power, maybe those kind of cool kind of
ballad type tracks on there as well, but
almost like a like a group chorus, like very like not like churchy, but you know, like those very church type, not church, but you know, like a very group choruses, right? These big giant group choruses mixed with speed, power. There is some of that. There's a lot of weird, great guitar work on. Well, I don't know about that specific album, but great guitar work on this kind of. These guys got great guitar work, and yeah, they that's definitely an overlooked band. I hadn't even realized that they were kind of German. Just kind of off the top of my head, I hadn't even realized that they were German. Uh, I know, yeah, great guitar work on in general. What's I was just trying to think of what their first album was called. I was trying to get that first album, but didn't really pan out for me. But that must have been their second album. Well, the first album had a couple different covers, so I know that's something that I was kind of researching there. That they had
Yeah. When you see this dude on the cover with his long hair bandana and his pretty funky looking guitar, you know it's going to be good. So like you said, you buy some albums for the covers, but this one's cover isn't great, but the songs are just so catchy, in my opinion. Yeah, I love it. So Attack, that's my pick.
I'll
But
have
I'll
to
be
check them
definitely
out.
checking out that Disaster.
I got some research there for me. Attack, was it?
Attack, yeah, The Secret Place, or those earlier albums that Jamie mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that must have been their second album because I know their first album was something that Return to Evil or had something.
Destinies of War. They had Destinies of War and
That's
I can't even think back actually.
yeah, their first one is 1985. I think that there's evil in the name. Return to Evil, I think it's called, something like that. But I believe the first one is 1985, and yeah, a killer band. If anyone watching at home has never heard of them, definitely check them out. By the time they progressed into this 92 stuff, you know, great guitar work and great kind of choruses and melody and a lot of really interesting influences going on here. And cool, we'll go next with Biggs' next pick here.
All right. So for my next pick, we talked about Primal Fear before. You know, really great Judas Priest type power metal band. But Matt Sinner, the bassist, his band before that was his namesake Sinner. And this album is it's more of a hard rock feel. This was from like the early 80s, maybe 83, 84. I just love the songs on there. There's a lot of hooks on here, just hard rock hooks. You can tell just by the cover art that it's going to be, you know, maybe on the glammy tip. It's not really that glammy. It's more, you know, hard rock. I would describe Matt's vocals as he's trying to be a little bit like Accept. It's Udo-like vocals, but not kind of like it's more of a growl, less of a scream like Udo. But a lot of great riffs on here. They've got dueling guitar, a lot of harmony guitars. It's a really great tracks. Born to Rock. It's kind of a cliche for a track, but it's actually a really, really good song. It's one of my favorite songs that from this band, and they're still around. Matt's in Primal Fear, obviously, and he's also has this band been going on since I think maybe the late 70s they started. And they've got quite a few albums, and I think they're an underappreciated band, and not a lot of people know about them. Sinner with Matt Sinner, who I actually met, who was a nice guy. So this was one of my essential picks.
Oh, definitely, yeah, very similar to like almost a Riot, where in the 80s it was almost a mixed pack where one of the albums might have been more hard rock and the next one might have been more heavy metal. So you know, they were always kind of switching back and forth between genres, you know, whether it's hard rock or metal or a mixture of both. So Sinner was one of those bands where they were kind of going back and forth between that hard rock, metal thing. And yeah, I know I don't have any Sinner. I've tried to get a few Sinners here and there. Hasn't really panned out for me. one time I was going to get a Sinner, but I was really under the impression it was kind of a bootleg, so I didn't get it. But yeah, here nor there on that. But yeah, Sinner's definitely good stuff. I know some of the later stuff, he's more hard rock for sure, and not that any of that matters. But yeah, I
We got,
know.
we
I
got
didn't
Herman
get,
Frank on there from Accept. Speaking of Accept.
Is that right?
Yeah. Play guitar on that album. There's Matt.
This is the center, the Danger Zone center, yeah?
Danger Zone, yeah. Yep.
Yep.
I think that might have been their first album. I think this is like maybe their second or third.
Yeah, right. I have to listen to some more center.
Yeah, definitely on the hard rock tip. It's very Accept like. It's really good. It's really, stadium rock, or so they tried to be.
oh yeah, and then pretty well all the former members of Accept made their way on so many different albums, or like so many different projects later on. There, like I couldn't even touch on all the projects that all those guys appeared on variously throughout the 80s and 90s. But I know I've randomly come across albums where I look at the credits and some of the one of the Accept guys were involved in. I was like, holy, like these guys were involved in a lot of different projects, probably just based off, popularity, but they had those ex-Accept guys had their hands in a lot of different projects going on. It's like, I know for even us, like if we were to go research what every project that they've been involved in, it would just be like, oh my God, like a huge list of things going on.
Their original bassist, Peter, I think his name is Peter Baltus. He played with John Norum and Glenn Hughes on the Face of Truth album, which is a really great album. Not German, but so that their original bassist played on a lot of people's different albums. And I think I can't remember any other projects, but he's played on so many albums. If you look at a lot of the credits, Peter Baltus, you'll see over and over and over again. He played a lot of bass on a lot of people's albums and wrote a lot of songs. Good songwriter.
Yeah, it's a shame he left Accept, but gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that came out of Germany was the record label Noise. If you knew it was brought out by Noise, you would pick it up anyway and give it a listen. I'm sure it's going to be some decent stuff, regardless.
Exactly. I'd see Noise title in the CD store years ago, and I would just automatically buy it. Wouldn't even think about it. Same thing if I saw maybe like Restless or Enigma, that label, the Griffin label.
Mm-hmm.
Could have a whole show on labels that I would buy from.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty well the mark of the label. If you see the Road Racer, these bigger things, I was definitely like, okay, well, that's pretty well the sign of that it's good. Or if you've seen a certain guy produced it, that was also a sign of that it's going to be good. And I think I'll go ahead and do my next pick. This band has not came up. They only had a couple albums in the 80s and then returned 20 years later, sort of thing, after they became kind of an occult band, an occult underground thrash band. And I'm going to go ahead with Exhumer's Possessed by Fire here. This is pretty well like the German version of Slayer. Pretty well a lot of Slayer type vibes if people at home aren't super familiar with them. Yeah, definitely kind of the Slayer vibes, but they're doing a little kind of their own German flair to it. So yeah, great songs on throughout this album. We got Fallen Saint on here, definitely a standout track. And the second album is equally as good, but I think this definitely became like a huge underground cult kind of classic during its time and even after its time, as the internet became prevalent and people were able to discover these old kind of bands. So that's definitely something that's probably became a big occult fan favorite here in the last 10-15 years, sort of thing. So this is definitely had to make my list. Great tones going on here. The thrashing is full on. This is a full on assault. But all things thrash. So definitely this is a top album to check out if you're not familiar with it.
Yeah, Fallen Saint is a genius song. Yeah, you got to hear that track. It's a great track.
Yeah, if anyone's not familiar, if you're a fan of Slayer, that's going to basically go hand in hand with that. Although, I hate to use those comparisons and even mention that, but, when you do put it on, a lot of the riffs and things like that will, bring back memories of maybe Slayer or something. But even though that was 1987 on that one, so at that point Slayer only had a few albums out, so 2 or 3 albums out. So they were probably a little influenced by Slayer for sure. But so maybe that's why I would mention that. But they kind of had that tone and thrashing going on, and it's definitely a worthy pick, I thought. So that's why I went ahead and picked that one.
Yeah. I think people are too harsh when they say, "Oh, they sound like they've been listening to too much Slayer," because every album I've heard pretty much sounds like a little bit of Slayer. They're just so influential.
Definitely, and that's a full-on assault, lyrically, musically, everything. That's a full-on assault. Where if you're into that aggressive kind of stuff, that's definitely be up your alley. All right, cool. And then we'll go next here with Dave's next pick.
I think we're up to Jack.
Right. Yeah,
Jack.
sorry. Yeah, right. Good. Yeah, good call. Right. I even got a little
Escaping
mixed up. Right. When I get talking, I forget who's going next. But anyway, great. Jack, we'll go with your next pick there then.
All right. Well, I mentioned Living Death before, as they appeared. Toto came out of retirement, I guess, and appeared on Disaster's Metallized Blood. But they were a very influential German metal band, obviously, that turned into more of a thrash band as they progressed. For some reason, I haven't brought anything here with me to the table, but I did want to speak about the album Protected from Reality. I think they really hit their stride with that album. It's just a perfect album, and his vocals might be a bit intense for some people because he does wail quite a bit at times. It gets quite screechy, but I quite enjoy them. They're maybe an acquired taste, but I think it suits the music very well. I find the album, it's a very claustrophobic kind of album. It's very dark. You have tracks like Intruder, the Woods of Necrophile. Oh man, it's just this presence that it has and it brings, and it's got like the Bates Motel building on the cover, I believe. And I can't quite recall whether I bought this album before the follow-up album, which is amazing cover art too. That was
World.
It was Neurosis, but it's got a brilliant cover. I love the front cover of that one. So I can't quite recall which one I bought first, but I clearly remember being quite impressed with Living Death with these two albums as a teenager. I thought they were quite amazing. And they broke up after that pretty much. And they made Killing in Action, which was a good album. And what was that? Yeah, the Killing in Action. But for me, it's definitely, I think the pinnacle album was Protected from Reality. 87, there was a lot happening in 87. So it stood out in 87. I thought it held its own very, very well. It was a strong album from Living Death. If you haven't heard it, you probably should check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I got I have their first album, and but I actually would probably prefer some of those, a couple of the later albums like that, Protected from Reality and World Neuroses. Those superb albums, great stuff.
I bought it on cassette a long time ago, and we used to trade a lot of tapes back then, and I got rid of it. But I'll have to reach out and try and find myself a copy, I think, or at least an MP3 copy. Anyway,
Do it.
And I do think I remember the vocals. Like I said, a little bit hard to handle, but maybe 30 years on, it might sound different.
I know I was trying to get my hands on a World Neuroses digibook, right? They came out with these hardcover digibooks. They recently reissued those hardcover book version kind of sort of thing, and I was trying to get my hands on that, but I couldn't really narrow it down here. But I still definitely want to get that Protected from Reality and World Neuroses albums, superb albums. So that's definitely a great choice.
Yeah, Living Death, people, get onto it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. And yeah, Dave, we'll go ahead with your next pick.
I know. Got to run with Rage Trapped. I don't know if you can see that. Bit glary, but yeah. Wow, that's easily their best album, in my opinion, of course. But just every song, 13 songs. I can't fault this album for such a big band. Rage Trapped. I could have chosen 3 or 4 of theirs. I did choose 2 for a top 10, but Trapped for me, if you're going to get into Rage, I'd start with this one, I think. Then you can either work yourself up or down through their catalogue, but this is right in the middle for me. Rage Trapped.
I believe that one was 92. I think that was 92, and that's
92.
Yeah, that's definitely an interest. I love Rage, but I know a lot of people kind of checked out after they started doing their progressive elements, and at that point in the early '90s, they were definitely incorporating a lot more, progressive type things going on there. But I think for a band like Rage, that really kind of benefited them, kind of stepping away from the full of thrash assault, right? It kind of the singer Peter Peavy there, I think probably likes to get his hands into some different genres and different influences. So he did step away from the full thrashing to do more of a heavy metal speed heavy metal sort of deal on some of these later album or mid album eras. And great stuff.
Yeah, PV Manny and Chris, that were the good lineup. They brought out the Secrets in a Weird World and Trapped. The Missing Link, another later one which I rated as a pretty good album. But yeah, those guys being a 3-piece, good stuff. I don't know how they do it.
I love the album that came after it. And then they had that 10-year. It made it appear like it was like a best of album, but it was not a best of album. It was a full on original material. The album after that one was that best of, or it was the 10-year anniversary of Rage, but it was all original material, and I love that album as well. And then they had another album, skipping my brain. Then the album after was End of Days, all generally good. And then they started getting into. I think the album after he did a couple symphony albums where he brought in that symphony, and then a lot of kind of mixed pack after that. Rage is still going with a pretty good career, and they just released a newer album here last couple months ago. I haven't listened to it a ton. I think I've gave it a couple spins.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys all mentioned Rage. I mean, so they've come up a couple of times now, and obviously they were quite an influential band. And it talked about Rage in Australia, the like our kind of an MTV for Australia, I guess. Invisible Horizons got played a lot on there. I didn't mind the song, but his vocals, they didn't really sit that well with me. And I couldn't really get into much of their other catalog. I liked their first album, Reign of Fear. That was pretty cool. But I have to admit, I haven't listened to Rage very much at all beyond that.
Yeah,
you might give them another chance.
Yeah, you might have fallen in that category where they started out maybe as a speed thrash mix, and then they moved into a bit of more progressive sounds, things like that. And maybe that's where you kind of checked out a little bit, right? Maybe. Yeah. Maybe his vocals mixing with the progression wasn't really doing it for you.
Nailed it. Yep.
And
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Review, worth the revisit.
You definitely your music tastes change every 5 or 10 years. You jump all over the place. Well, I do. You'll be
That is true, David.
thrash metal for a while, then you'll be into the death, the heavier stuff for a while. Then I just missed out on Rage's last 10 albums. And you might go back and revisit. It's kind of not the same, but yeah, everyone's in the same boat when it comes to metal. I think jump from genre to genre and love them all. Definitely.
Yeah, and I'll try not to speak too much because, well, I have Rage still to come on my list, so it's just a matter of which one at that point, and we'll get to that when the time comes. But yeah, so David Biggs, if you want to go next there.
Yeah, so my next pick might be a little controversial. We were talking about Scorpions before and Uli John Roth. And so I got to mention my favorite artist of all time is Jimi Hendrix. I love Jimi Hendrix, love everything he's done. Is he metal? Not really. He practically invented the lexicon of heavy metal with the guitar and everything. But Uli John Roth, he loved Hendrix too. And my next pick it's called From Here to Eternity. It's more of it's a compilation, but what's interesting about this 3-disc set is that it has something called Symphonic Prologue to the Symphonic Legends from '95. It's called the Aquila Suite. So it was previously unreleased. You could only get it really with this 3 CD box set, but I think now it comes on its own, remastered. But what it is it's Uli playing guitar with a symphony. And when you think of symphonies and heavy metal, you think of Metallica S&M, which I'm not really a big fan of that album. But this is really symphonic, and it's got very symphonic singers, very melodic stuff that I really, really like. So is it really heavy metal? Not really, but it kind of fits that the German metal, because he was in the Scorpions, and he's got his solo albums on here: Electric Sun, Fire, Wind, Earthquake. But this is something really, really worth checking out. Symphonic, it's just awesome. And you were talking about Rage before, and when they got kind of into their symphonic mode in the early '90s with the Lingua Mortis Orchestra, I think that's when I really started to actually notice them. And that was my introduction to Rage, with the symphony. So I kind of really like all those albums, and then I went back and heard the 80s albums, which were more of a kind of thrashy, technical thrash. And the vocals, PB's vocals sometimes are an acquired taste. He's not the most melodic guy in the world. And before, when he was in the 80s, when he was doing the thrash type metal, it was more of a thrashy scream. Now it's more of a growl. So I got kind of sidetracked, but yeah, Uli John Roth, really cool.
Yeah, actually, earlier when Uli John Roth, when you brought up the earlier Scorpion albums, you mentioned Uli John Roth, and I just wanted to touch on, I did actually see Uli John Roth years back, and such a really down-to-earth, personable, really cool guy, no ego to him at all, right? I seen him play a really tiny, small club. At that point, I could have, if I wanted to, I could have just reached my hand out and touched him if I wanted to. So that's how small this club was. And, the stage wasn't very high. The stage would have been just, not much of a really stage at all. He's basically standing, level with the crowd. And, it was funny that, he likes to tell stories in between. He's a very, very down to earth guy, no ego about him, very cool vibe to the guy. He is very genuine with that psychedelic, mystical cadence about him, right? Where, he still wears the bandana and the feather. He's a really cool cat, right? And I know one thing that was funny from the concert is I was standing near quite a rambunctious fellow where he was yelling and really ramped up, and it wasn't really the type of show for that to be, like metal and like being a really amped up guy. So this guy was like a little too amped up, and Uli in between one of the songs is like, "Hey man, just settle down, just cool her down a bit, right?" And I just thought it was really funny, right? Because at that point, Uli John Roth would have probably noticed this guy just probably going just a little too hard, right? And he's like, "Oh, just calm her down, just relax," right? So I always thought that was really funny from that particular concert in general. And Uli was great. He busts out some of his solo material, his Scorpions, everything like that. So really cool stuff. And yeah, just really cool vibe to him. Very genuine cadence to him and everything like that. I don't know if anyone else has seen him live or anything like that, but yeah, cool stuff. And
Yeah, I saw the Scorpions a few years ago, but is he still with them? I'm not a huge Scorpions fan.
He left the Scorpions in like the mid 70s or late 70s, I think, after Taken by Force.
Yeah. See, it's the earlier Scorpions that I prefer anyway. So yeah, that's probably why. Kind of a mix, I guess, a mixed bag for me. Scorpions. I like tracks here and there. I'm not really a big full Scorpions album kind of guy.
Yeah, and then actually going back to that when you mentioned is he in still Scorpions or not, is when I was checking out, when I was contemplating, or when I was going to that his solo show, the Uli John Roth solo show, I was kind of just wondering what am I getting myself into in terms of his singer. Like, okay, well, it was kind of apparent that it wasn't just like a solo by himself, that he had a singer. So I went on the YouTube and checked out his singer, and at first I was thinking in the clips or whatever that I had saw that his singer wasn't that great, but when I actually got to the concert, the singer was serviceable enough to pull off the songs that he needed to, and actually he sounded pretty good live. I'm not sure the singer's name off by heart, but he was okay. He was probably better than I was expecting based off my preconceived notions. But when I actually saw him live, he was better live than I predicted. And I know if Uli does any kind of live shows, I think he kind of uses that same singer nowadays. So if anybody's kind of curious about that, because you did mention the Uli John Roth solo material, I'm not sure. Is there a singer on a lot of that stuff, on a lot of that material?
Yeah, there's a singer on all his. He sings on his. I think on his solo albums he sings, but on the Symphonic Legends, he's got different singers. And there's I think there's some female singers and there's a male soprano singer. It's just very beautifully done. It's very intricate. A lot of layers. Just gorgeous stuff. Gorgeous.
Yeah, really cool guy to see live. I can kind of just get a sense that the crowd just really loves his vibe, right? Really cool cat, and obviously authentic, being straight up from the '70s, and he's probably been smoking weed his whole life and things like that. So all that stuff is very natural and genuine to him. So that stuff comes across to the fans, and people kind of notice those kind of things and as being genuine and authentic. So that's cool stuff to touch on. And
sounds like a great show that you caught there. Nice and personal.
Yeah, that's cool. And then for whatever, I'm going to go next with my next pick here. And for whatever reason, I don't know how we got into Rage. Oh, the symphonic thing, you were kind of touching on that. And I just switched up my little order here. And because Rage did get mentioned briefly for a second there. And I'm going to go ahead with my next pick. And it was really tough picking between the Rages. Steve mentioned earlier the Family Man, and I was actually tossing and turning between. This isn't my pick, but Steve did mention the Family Man earlier, and I was tossing and turning between that album and this album, Secrets in a Weird World. In terms of production and vibes, they're both very similar, so that's why I had a really tough choice choosing between the two. But ultimately, I did choose this one. In terms of the sound and production, it's really cool and unique. That even holds up to something like now, where you put it on and it sounds almost fresh but also really old. It's just a really unique vibe to it, production-wise and mixing and everything like that. PV's voice might be some people don't like it, some people do, and also at this point they are moving into a very kind of progressive thrash speed, kind of a mixture of all three things going on. Really cool vibe. I know I kind of just came across one of the music videos for this song. Just awesome. Just totally pumps you up, amps me up. Great album, and I really would probably, since I did narrow it down to this would probably be my favorite Rage album. I know a lot of people are choosing that first Rage album, but I kind of tend to more like the when they were experimenting with the progressive side of things a little bit, and not too progressive. It's not like it's full on Iron Maiden or something like that, but there is some little bit of progressive elements to it while remaining thrashy and speedy. And then we got this guy here, when he left Rage, he joined Gravedigger, the guitarist there. Really cool guy. Uli, I forget.
Manny Schmidt.
Oh yeah,
Manny Schmidt.
Manny Schmidt. Okay, there we go. Yeah, great guitar player. A lot of emotion, and I think at that point, PV and him had a really cool connection and vibe between these two guys. I know a lot of people really love the Manny era, and I think these two guys got along really well, and these albums are very apparent in that these guys were gelling perfect, very perfect. Maybe later on, PV wanted to do his symphonic things, and at that point, Manny's like, okay, well, where am I included in this, right? So I think maybe that's when he left and then joined Digger. So either way, that all turned out great in general, and yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, well, while we're on the Maddie and the Gravedigger, let's go back to Gravedigger, Excalibur.
Wow. This
album is probably my first introduction to Gravedigger on their second round, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was. I'm very partial to medieval themes, so it really hit home with me. And I don't think there's a weak track at all on this album. It's probably, I know that Gravedigger are fairly consistent, and they have some really strong albums, like the Gravedigger and the Reaper, this one and the following one this one I think was the Gravedigger, and they've all got great sounds. But this one I really like what they brought to it with. They're not quite, haven't gone as far as they went with Rheingold with the symphonies and the sounds, but it's just the right balance. I don't mind Rheingold, but this album for me really just smashes everything out of the park. What can I say? All of the songs, it's so hard to pick a song out of it. It's just a phenomenal album. Really, the atmosphere is just great. The speed is great. The heaviness is great. The song, Merlin getting enchanted by a woman, by Morgana Le Fay, and it's the whole story of Excalibur is there. It's great. It's a really good concept album. It's one of my favorite concept albums. Rank it really highly.
Absolutely, and I believe Percival's on that album. Percival.
It is, yes.
Oh, right, and actually, I was going to get you to show people. Maybe if people aren't familiar with that album, I know I like the back round table picture they have with the artist drew all the band members in a round table type thing. That's really cool. Maybe you could show the back cover. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. The artist there totally customized all the band members sitting in the round table with their night gear on, the swords. That's really cool. I like that. I know the specific I have a digipack version there, so I think it's just slightly different on the back. I think it's just blown back up a bit. I think that one is just blown up a bit. But yeah, I think it's still the back. The back is the same in general, and I always like that back part.
Yeah, the art is great on this. You can't fault anything about this album. It's just so great. I mean, yeah, it's just the thunder just through the whole album. I really like a thunderous sound in a band, and they really nail it with this. It's just that it's so heavy and tight and together. It's really fucking strong album. Pardon my French there, but yeah, the spell. What can I say? Yeah, Pendragon, Excalibur. Oh man, Morgana Le Fay. It just thumps right the way through, right down to the final war. You know, Mordred's song. Yeah, Avalon, the final medieval outro track. It's all just the guitars just and the symphonies all just tie in together so well. It's just perfect. It's not symphonies, just the medieval tones, the flutes and whatnot. It's just beautiful.
The one of the greatest things about Gravedigger is their sing along choruses. I've never been to a Gravedigger show, but you know, I hear all their albums and just all the choruses. You just want to sing along to them. You want to be a part of it. You feel like you're a part of the band, and that's what one of the great things about a lot of German metal bands is their I call them soccer holler choruses, because you just want to feel like you're part of the crowd, and it makes you feel part of the band, closer to the band. So it's a cool thing.
That's a great observation, David. That's very true. That they do. German metal is very strong with the choruses and the chants, and that is probably one of the things that draw many people to the music, is that feeling of family that you get, you know, that you're all one together there, even when you're singing on your own listening to it.
It's a major difference between you know, European or German metal and American metal, is that a lot of the American metal, they're not sing along choruses. They're not these big things that you want to sing along to. It's like, okay, there's a hook, there's a chorus. Yeah, okay. They got to the chorus part, there's the hook. But with the German metal, power metal, it's like, yeah, we're all in this together. Whereas a lot of the American stuff, it's like, you know, they're singing it to you, whereas you're singing with the German bands. So it's like, you know, a feeling of family, I guess.
Yeah,
it's almost like the Germans are having a lot more fun doing it, aren't they? Creating that feeling.
Yeah, it's a certain vibe that those bands are able to create. That's it's very distinctive between, you know, American bands, and it's just what I've noticed. But
and speaking of one of the things that I like about Gravedigger is how, because they've been around for such a long time and they've made so many albums, and while they're all very similar, they're all a little bit different in their own way, like whether it be the concept that they're dealing with, or whether they've harkened back to, you know, more of their heavy metal roots in their recordings. I mean, like the Ballad of the Hangman, I really like this album. Like, I think it's a lot of heavy metal in the album. It's a good fun album. A lot of, again, with the chanting and the sing-alongs present there. They bring a lot to the table generally. I mean, some albums can sound a bit similar, but for a band that has that many albums out, I think they've done pretty well with bringing a different sound to many of their recordings.
I think with the last studio album, they actually had like a bit of a polka song on there, which kind of got a little bit of flack. I don't know. I don't remember the album.
New one?
Yeah, I think, is that the one with there's a polka song somewhere, one of the albums, one of the last two albums. And I was reading a review of the album, and people were like, well, what is this? Why are they doing this? But I think that, you know, they did it as a joke because they could.
Yeah, I think that was probably the one before this one. This one just popped out, Fields of Blood. So what it is? No, it's got the Fields of Blood on it. Yeah, it is Fields of Blood. Fields of Blood. Yep. I only just bought it the other day.
Yeah, all their stuff is good. I have all their albums. I have multiple copies of the earlier albums. So, yeah.
I know me personally, you know, I wouldn't want to say this as a negative thing, because Gravedigger has such a large body of work at this point, you know, 15 albums sort of thing. You know, I'm not sure exactly, but, you know, Excalibur is not my favorite, but it's still basically a 9 or a 10, either way you look at it. And, you know, as you guys are talking, you know, I'd be full on interested in doing a full on Gravedigger album ranking at some point. So if that's something either of you are interested in, we'll get that going in the future as well. But yeah, so we can definitely get that going. I know I'm pretty familiar with pretty well every good Gravedigger album, so I'd be capable of doing that. And to touch on, it's not my favorite Gravedigger album. Again, it would actually be interesting for me to actually do a full-on album ranking and figure out where it would lie.
The minute I see that album Excalibur, the first thing that goes into my mind is that the chorus in that song, in the title song, he goes, Excalibur, sword of the kings. Like, I can't sing, obviously, but that's stuck in my head. I mean, that is a major thing. When you see an album cover, you see that artwork, which is very, it's brilliant artwork, and the song just pops into your head automatically. So that's why Gravedigger is such a good band, and they need more recognition, especially here in the US.
I think even the name might turn people off for what it be, just because it might sound like a mainstream kind of, and then there used to be that monster truck Gravedigger, and which was huge in North America, right? So maybe just a lot of people were confused in general. Who knows, right? But obviously a top band. If you're familiar with them, they're a top band. So yeah, I guess we'll get her going next with Dave's next pick here.
On the topic of German bands bringing out fun albums, I like the first two Scanner releases.
Yes.
Terminal Earth and Hypertrace. Terminal Earth would be my pick, but yeah, a lot of fun, catchy tunes there, and pretty much a good package of speed and power to keep everyone happy. Yeah, Scanner. Not sure what they're doing now, but back then they were pretty good little band, I thought.
Yeah, and yeah, great stuff. Nice speedy sound. His voice is a little high pitched. Voice is pretty high pitched. So speedy band, and they didn't come out with a second album till '94. I believe the second album is Mental Reservation, and I have Mental Reservation. Really cool. It's actually originally I would actually have Terminal Earth as being just a clear cut above the second album, but I found myself, the more I'm listening to that second album, I love that second album. They still remained a little speedy, powery. There's it's pre-symphonic, right before all that symphonic stuff started coming out, and they incorporated a bit of kind of higher up chorusy type stuff, but really cool band. I know that first album is kind of more straightforward speed, pretty much, and then the second album they kind of experimented with a bit of kind of grandiose choruses, and really cool stuff if you're not familiar with the second one.
I think this is the second one. I think the first one's Hypertrace, then you've got
right,
and maybe Ball of the Damned come out around the same time as.
I think Ralph Sheepers sang on Ball of the Damned.
Yeah, Ball of the Damned was 95. Ball of the Damned was 95. But yeah, you're right. I totally forgot about Hypertrace. Yeah, you're totally right. Correct. Good call.
Yeah, very similar though to Terminal Earth, but yeah, either one for me. Hypertrace or Terminal Earth. If I think the early Scanners are the ones to go for. Definitely.
I'll be checking that out. I don't actually. They've never crossed my radar. Speaking of Scanner, like them and Attack, I'd had heard of before. So I've got two strong albums there to follow up, as well as the was it the Udi Axel Pell, whoever he is.
Axel Rudy Pell.
Axel Rudy Pell, him too. Yeah. So this has been interesting chat.
Yeah, this one's 89. I'm pretty sure the other one would be 88 or 87. Wouldn't be too far behind it. But yeah, fun little band, good little choruses, catchy stuff.
Yeah, one of
Yeah.
the funny things about growing up in the 80s, well, as many of us did, was it was because it was so hard to get music. It was really a case of what you could find in a store, or you could trade with someone. And there were so many bands that we've had to go back and backtrack on via the internet. It was a very different time to what we're experiencing now with the internet and being able to access everything, via streaming platforms, and it's all just at your fingertips, where it just never was when I was young. It was just not there. Sounding like got my old man hat on here, but yeah, it's definitely times have changed a lot, and it's great. It's good. I mean, we spend probably a lot of time going back over going through periods of time and finding these bands like Scanner and Attack that they're clear favorites for me, because they're heavy metal crossing with the thrash, which was what I cut my teeth on as a teenager. So that's certainly stuff that I'm really keen on hearing.
Yeah, and I know I know it might be like sacrilege to some viewers at home, but it's like I almost might like the Mental Reservation a little bit more than that album. I don't know. I just found that Mental Reservation to really grow on me with every repeated listen. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Mental Reservation is great. If that's something people at home are watching have overlooked, or David, you've even maybe overlooked it just because it was maybe 1994. But that is a superb album. Awesome. Again, Terminal Earth is equally, or if not better, and depending on who you ask. But okay, cool. I guess we'll go with David Biggs' next pick here, and we're getting here down to the nitty gritty. So I don't know if people are saving some weird stuff here for the last few.
I'm gonna have a weird one here. This is probably one of my top favorite 100 albums or so of all time, and it's another Ralph Shaper's band, Tyrant Pace, Long Live Metal. I don't know how many people are familiar with this band. It was Ralph Shaper's first band. I believe this is the second album. They had a first album, I think it was called Eye to Eye, not the Scorpions record, but they did their own Eye to Eye record. This is a very much Judas Priest style heavy metal, straight up heavy metal with nice anthemic choruses and amazing riffs. There's a couple guitarists, and that first song, Shockwaves, is one of my favorite songs of all time. There is a carved out solo section in the middle where it's these dueling guitars, and it's like, the dueling solos in the Painkiller by Judas Priest. It's something like that, where it's just these two guitarists just shred. These two guitarists, they shred. They take turns shredding, similar to that fight song, Nailed to the Gun, where the two guys take turns shredding. It's like they try to out shred each other. That's what this whole album is, and it just kicks so much ass. I listen to it all the time. Sometimes I go on kicks where I listen to it every day on the way to work, and it's actually a really good, fun album. It's straight up heavy metal, Judas Priest style, maybe like kind of Screaming for Vengeance style, that kind of deal. A lot of double kick, just sing along choruses. Awesome. Ralph Sheeper's first band. Totally, highly recommend it.
A lot of spandex on that album, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's when Ralph had hair.
So that was definitely pre-Gamma Ray then, right?
Oh, yep. Right before Gamma Ray, yeah.
So that would have been obviously into the 80s. What year was that?
This was 85.
Oh wow, cool. I had no idea about that at all.
This was 85, and I think the first album was maybe 83 or 84.
Oh.
So this is it's kind of like Screaming for Vengeance style Judas Priest, whereas the album before this, for our first album, was more like a British Steel type, slower mid-pace stuff. So they definitely really had the Judas Priest style in mind when they recorded these albums. But this one definitely has its own personality, and I really think it stands on its own. And it just the amount of hooks that they put into one song is amazing for a young band. Just amazing. Love it. Long live metal.
Yeah, that's a good one, that Tyrant Pace.
Yeah. And like the burning flying V on there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's like that's basically a very good approximation of, you know, a visual representation of what the music sounds like. A burning flying V, just shredding riffs. And again, you know, the rhythm section is very important for me, and a lot of double kick, bottom end. It's got to have a bottom end. I need an audible bass. It can't be Injustice for All. It's got to be audible for me, but not like Steve Harris runs that I don't really care for all that much. But I like an audible bass that's kind of in the pocket, and that's what this is. That perfect 80s trebly sound that everybody loves. Good stuff.
That's something I'm so excited to actually listen to that pretty well when we log off here, I'm going to go check that out. Like, I want to hear that right now.
Yeah, that first song, Shockwaves, it blew my mind when I first heard it. I'm like, who are these guys? How come I never heard of them? It's one of those kind of things. And that's what I love about, I do a lot of blind buying. I'll just go into a store and I'll look through other CDs. And if it's like some kind of 80s or 90s metal, I'll just blind buy it for a couple bucks and check it out. So, yeah.
That's definitely a bit of an obscure gem to bring to the table.
Yeah. One of my top 100 albums, but a lot of my top albums aren't necessarily what, you know, general public thinks are top albums, but that's the beauty of being a you know, collector. What you think is cool, someone else might not think, and vice versa.
I have zero doubts that when I do hear it, that I would probably definitely like it. And I guess suppose it's my turn next year, and it's funny that I think I'll continue with this album. It's funny that you did mention that burning flying V on the front, because I know there's another German band that had a burning flying V on the cover. I know the one I have doesn't. They had a couple different covers come out, but my next pick here will be Accept's Restless and Wild here. Right from the opening track, Fast as a Shark, pretty well your quintessential speed, your proto speed track to take you into the rest of the album here. And at this point, the band is firing all cylinders. You know, great guitar playing. Udo is top left on his top notch here, doing his thing, and they're definitely putting it all together here on this album. This is probably one of those albums where I was thinking it would appear on multiple choices. So maybe people are gonna save their opinions from when they pick it themselves. If not, you can chime in now or chime in when you do make your own Accept pick. But this, again, with Accept, they were pretty well on fire. I guess, well, actually, those first couple albums people kind of dismiss and overlook, even though I actually really love the first Accept album. The second album is pretty AC/DC-like, should I say, even though that's not a big surprise if anyone's heard I'm a Rebel. I think actually Udo or whoever was actually trying to write a lot of those songs for AC/DC or something. I don't know the full story behind that. Maybe some of you guys know the full story behind that. Touch on that for a second, but you know, I know after those first two albums, they really found their sound after those first two albums, and then they were pretty on fire for 4, 5, 6 albums in a row until Udo came back there in the early 90s. So at that point, you could probably choose any, you know, between any of the album, Balls to the Wall, Metal Heart, this one. So it's just a matter of a toss-up or a matter of this particular week. Maybe next week I could choose Metal Heart. So maybe this particular week I'm going with this one.
Yeah, it's a great pick. I do have Accept in my list, but for that, it's hard to pick an album. That album is amazing. I mean, look, it kicks off with Fast as a Shark. So, well, what can you say? I mean, that song has influenced so many people. You've got Demon's Night, you know, Flash, Rocking Man, you know, Princess of the Dawn, and even other tracks like Get Ready are, you know, really cool. You know, like just rocking. Bit of that, perhaps, of that you're talking about how they sounded more rock with the more of the, you know, they had that song that AC/DC used well in the past, and they did bring a lot of, from what I recall reading about them, they were inspired by AC/DC, as many people were at that point in time. So I don't know whether he was trying to write songs specifically for AC/DC or was a story behind that, but that was something that came to light for me not that long ago also. So I was a bit surprised to find out that they had a song that was, that was going to be used by them, but they used it. So yeah, it's what can you say, man? I'll talk about them later. So let's move on.
Yeah, you could certainly make a good compilation album with a lot of the Accept stuff, couldn't you? Like you said, hard to pinpoint one. Just make one great album.
They're all great. Even the David Reese album, I love that album too.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I know I have a friend who swears by that album. He's like, man, you have to check it out. It's good. I'm like, I'm not turning my back on Udo. It's either Udo or nothing. Even though I've actually been checking out the replacement singer's first band, TT Quick. I forget the replacement singer because I have not checked out anything
Mark
past.
Carnillo.
Yeah, anything past except Udo. I have not checked out anything past. Just to be basically loyal to Udo, even though there's no actually real reason. But I actually was thinking, to help me get into that Mark Tarnello era of Accept, I should actually go back to his first band and be a fan of his first band, and then I can later enjoy the Accept era stuff. So that's actually something where I'm kind of researching, investigating right now, and trying to listen to his first band, TT Quick, so I can become a fan of him, so I don't have to have him undershadow Udo, because I kind of just want to remove that aspect, because it's been hard to remove that aspect, right? When you see new Accept, and it is hard to remove that. Is anyone else or is anyone else in tune with all the newer Accept stuff, or?
I have it all. I honestly like Udo solo albums better. The later Udo solo albums better than the newer Accept albums. I think they're trying to capture a sound that they can't recapture without Udo. I mean, they have some good songs. Like I like the first album with Mark, Blood of the Nations, I think it was. It's pretty good. Some good riffs, some good choruses, but it's just like you just try to replace Udo, and instead of going in a different direction like they did with David Reese, which I really love that album. It's very melodic. So I don't know. For me, it was the newer Accept is a bit of a misstep for me, but I have it all, but I just don't really listen to it.
Yeah, I reckon the Blood of the Nations was a great return to form, but I've beyond that, he's admitted that he's just knows how to make the Accept sound now for his albums, and Wolf's been doing that ever since. So everything that's come from Blood of the Nations has sounded just like Accept, and there are some standout tracks on them. But you're right, they're clearly just trying to sound like that period of time of Accept when going back to the Balls to the Wall and Metal Heart period. That's what they're trying to capture here. It's a great sound, and look, I'm partial to it, but I have to admit that Blood of the Nations is the only one that has really stood out to me as a full album. I think every album after that's just been treading water with their sound. They haven't come out with anything else that has absolutely wowed me. I know there are others that disagree and say no, they're really great, and I know some other guys, some other 80s metalheads, and they all really into the newer Accept albums. But yeah, for me, I find that it's just enjoyable. It's not something that I need to have, but I think that when you've lived some 20 odd years of music, at least you get to a point where you have your favorites, and you're going to stick to them anyway. It's hard. It can be hard to change your mind at that point in time too.
Yeah, I think if they were taking their sound in a bit of a different direction, I think it might have been another story, but I mean, retreading past glories is very hard to do. I mean, the band that's done it, I think everybody would agree, is Halloween. I mean, they created a new album. It's part past, but they also look to the future. And I think that's why, having the two lead vocalists, the old new vocalist and the new old vocalist, however they jokingly tell about it, it's just really brilliant how they incorporated Kiski and Darius. It's awesome.
Yeah, that was unique. That was unique. I was quite floored by that return to form from Halloween.
No, I didn't think that. I guess they're older, so maybe they put the egos aside. I didn't know how they would be able to cooperate on an entire album together, but they did it. And that album's a 10 out of 10 for me. That's self-titled. Really good stuff.
Yeah, great.
Strong stuff. Just there it is, in case you haven't seen it yet, peoples. New Halloween.
Right, and I think to veer back on track, I think I did make my accept pick, and we got going with some stories here. And we'll get her back on track with Jack's next pick, and we're on our last two picks, so it's going to be interesting here to crunch down our last two.
Oh, that is a tough one because look, I might just at this point just throw in an honorable mention to Stormwitch. They are basically very much into Iron Maiden when they started their bands. Clearly have a very Iron Maiden sound, but you should check them out because they have a great occult edge to them. Something worthwhile, I think, to listen to. I really enjoy the early Stormwitch. But my next pick is this amazing album from Holy Moses. This album, I remember, it was one of those, again, you bought it on sight of the cover. It was a blue cover, my vinyl, if I recall correctly. This one's like a sepia kind of color here, but on the disc. But gee, what an album. Like, I didn't know, I heard it, I was like, this vocalist is just sick. Who is this? And I looked at the liner notes and it's like, what? This is it's a lady, like Sabina Klassen. What the hell? Like, what's going on here? How can you sound like? I've never heard. I know that now there's loads of female singers now making waves doing the death sounds, but back in the 80s, I had not heard that ever before, and it was absolutely, to link it together as expecting it to, I did not expect that to be the front person to be a woman. So that was amazing. And it's great to see. One thing I like about metal, in fact, is, from the early days, you've always had a great presence from women. You've got, you got Lita Ford, you've got, Wendy O. Williams, you've got Doro, there's, Lee Aaron. There's been so many amazing front women in metal, and I'm veering off track here, but I think it's kind of relevant to Holy Moses with Sabina. These, and nowadays it's so great to see metal being as inclusive as it is for everybody, because it always has been something for everybody, and it's one of those genres that has always had that in it, and I think that's a beautiful thing. But the album itself, wow, what can you say? Is, again, I mentioned the claustrophobic sound that Living Death had. It has a similar feeling on this, with tracks like Fortress of Desperation. It's an immense album. If it's not dragging you through a really dark place, it's slurring you in another dark place. It's either fierce or it's heavy. It's just constantly just driving you through. I think there's a drum intro, I think, on I think it might be Life Destroyer. It's just amazing. It's just the whole album it's untouchable. They are an interesting band. They started as actually a black metal, calling themselves black metal, at least, from their first album. The first demo was called Black Metal, but their first album was Queen of Siam, which they were clearly trying to do to solidify their sound. And they very quickly moved on to this as their second album, and they really did find their sound there. And their husband and wife team, Sabina and Andy, back in the day, I think they since gone their separate ways, and Sabina is the only remaining member in the band. I think Atomic Steve was in, and he's been in he's been I think he was in Sodom, and I think he was in another band. I can't recall the name now. Another popular band that we've talked about already, but he was in, I think he was maybe in Gamma Ray. No.
Was that? Which band?
Atomic Steve, was he in Gamma Ray?
sure.
I don't know. Not
No.
sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was, but yeah. Anyway, it's one of those albums that's just absolutely killer. I think if you haven't heard it, it's their best representation. Some of their albums after that, they kind of keep the same sound. They had this amazing bass in this album that is just they bring it back with Reborn Dogs, but this album is absolutely head and shoulders above everything else in their discography. If it's the one album from Holy Moses that you buy, it should be this one, because if you haven't heard it, you need to get your hands on it.
Definitely, and it's actually really cool that you do bring them up, and you did touch on Sabina's vocals and how you think that's pretty influential, essential to the genre, or fronted female, and I totally agree in the sense that, I'm not, I couldn't say that I know the full history of every single female fronted band on earth, but I know going back from, Doro, the Runaways, Wendy O. Williams, and I know some of them might have done some odd screams here and there, but nothing like Sabina had did. I think Sabina, again, I don't know the full on, I can't touch on every single female fronted band in history. I'm sure there's some super obscure gems where someone might be like, oh no, she was actually the first. But I would say Sabina was probably the full on first death metal female vocalist, like where she was full on screaming in that death metal approach. I would think she is the first the female who did those death metal kind of screams similar to death, right? And the Coliseum was 1986, and I'd be pretty hard pressed to find anyone who was doing a full on death metal type vocal in 1986. And like even going back, like I'm a fan of B-52s, and even the B-52s had those girls were doing a couple weird kind of shrieks and screams, but again, nothing like a full-on thrash assault like Sabina was doing, where the band is thrashing, or whatever you think it may be, or whatever. Definitely falls in that kind of thrashy type of stuff, but Sabina was definitely adding that extreme death metal type of vocal to it, and I would definitely probably consider her to be probably that first extreme metal screamer female.
Yeah, she was amazing, and there has been so many. I mean, Arch Enemy come to mind as the next powerhouse female fronted band. That, I mean, we shouldn't even say female fronted, because that really is, it's not really applicable. It's just, she's just another human being making great sounds. But it is so good to see that women are standing up and doing that. It's just fucking great.
She's super aggressive. Like even those vocals now, you hear them and you might think could even be a male if you weren't listening super closely. Like that's how deep her voice was going. In terms
I think the Chuck comparison was good. That's really, when you're trying to describe what she sounds like, from the deep growls to the drawn out screams that she does, that's a very good comparison.
Yeah, no, that's actually great you brought them up, because as I had them in my little honorable mentions pile right here, so I was going to mention that Queen of Siam after the picks here. but I don't already need to because you brought it up, so that's great. And yeah, we'll go next here with Dave's next pick.
Guys, I'm gonna have to make this my last one. Sorry about that.
Okay.
But, talking German metal, essential. Like we've spoken about this band already today, but so many albums, gone through so many different styles of playing, but still around today. But my favorite album of theirs, and I keep going back to it, would be Sodom's Better Off Dead. Like, just got a couple of songs that aren't theirs on there, like Turn Your Head Around and Cold Sweat. But
Love it.
all in
Love it.
all, as Sodom's my favorite band for German stuff, and I just find Better Off Dead just to be such a great album of theirs. Anyone getting into Sodom, like I said, you can go back to their earlier black stuff. Now their modern sort of stuff, to me, it's all starting to sound a little bit the same, but back in your late 80s, early 90s, I think that's when they peaked. And yeah, Better Off Dead, nice, clear vocals, great guitars, great songs. Yeah, not as thrashy and brutal as your Persecution Manias, and I started to slow things down a bit with Agent Orange, but Better Off Dead for me was just something different, and I really enjoy that album. Just today, it's in my car, it's on repeat, at least once a week. I love it. So
You said Cold. You said Cold Sweat. Is that Thin Lizzy Cold Sweat they cover?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, I think a few bands do it. I think Halloween cover it. Yeah.
I love it with Tom's accent. That's great. I think it's a brilliant cover. Yeah, I love Better Off Dead was an album that surprised me when it came out. Like you said, it's a bit different. Capture the Flag, brilliant song. Yeah, again, the drum sound, amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. Love Sodom. If you're talking German metal, you can't go past Sodom.
I'm definitely gonna go check those out now.
And Dave, were you saying you're getting a little pressed for time here?
I am, Jamie, but mate, thanks for the invitation.
No, that's cool. So then I believe you would have one more pick. So let's just get through your one last pick here, so we can get you out of here.
I don't want to go past Sodom as my last pick, as my number one. I could have thrown a few in, like Sacred Steel, War Gods of Metal. I love that album. Another great band. Like I said, a few more Rage picks. Like I said, I had Primal Fear and some honorable mentions, but they've all been spoken about already. So, man, good stuff. It's been great. I got some homework to do now. Go and search up some albums that you guys have spoken about today, and yeah, I'll catch us on the Facebook pages, I guess.
Oh, cool. Great.
Man.
Thanks for showing up and sticking around this long. I believe I was actually talking with a buddy of yours. I was trying to get him on the show. He's a little busy with things going on. And
I'll be playing netball.
Right, and I believe you're heading over to your buddy's house there to have a good get-together tonight. So enjoy yourself, have fun.
All right, guys. It's been good.
All right,
Good to see you. It's good to meet you.
Take care.
Take
Awesome.
care.
See you guys.
Bye.
Now I'll try and turn this thing off. All right, guys. Good luck. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for
Jamie.
showing up. Super valuable to the conversation. Cool. Thank you.
It's been great. Thanks, guys.
Great to meet you.
Same.
Cool. So we'll move along here with David's next pick, and then we're on the last two here. So
I'll just hear David's last pick, then I'll go.
Okay.
right.
So we've been talking about a lot of Rage, and I do love Rage, but this might be a little controversial too because it's a later album. I love Rage Unity from 2002, and the reason why I love it is because I consider it just an apex predator of technical metal. They've got the guitarist, I think he's a Russian guy. This guy right here is Peavy. That's Mike Tirana. He was an Axel Rudy Pell. Forgot his name. What was his name? I think it's Victor. But that guy, I mean, just technically brilliant. And this album, even though the artwork's not so great, the songs are just amazing. All I Want, Insanity, Down. I think actually Down was a video. Set This World on Fire. This is just technically brilliant metal. Hooks and choruses, just amazing. I love this record. This is probably one of the first Rage CDs that I bought. And then I went back and listened to the 80s stuff. So I'm not as partial to the 80s stuff as you guys are. I do like it, but probably because this was my first Rage album. I love it. Great stuff.
Yeah, and I think at that point, I think that's 2004. I think I'm not 100% sure.
2002.
I think they have 2002, 2004-ish, and I think at that point he had his symphony phase where he was working with those various symphonies, and he had his little phases. And I think at that point he kind of brought her back in and kind of just did a mixed pack of all of his influences of everything. So that is that combination of speed, power, thrash, just standard heavy metal. So I think it's just a combination of all those things, and yeah, definitely a quality album. I do own it myself, although that wouldn't matter. But I do have it, and that is one of those things where it's pretty well a perfect mix of speed, power, modern things like that.
And you can't forget about the hooks. There's just so many hooks in the songs that they write. They're heavy, they're metal, but there's hooks, which is one of the things that I really listen for with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, his voice.
Do I remember the chorus afterwards? Do I remember some of the lyrics? Do I remember the guitar riff or something? And Rage does that for a lot of songs.
His voice does add well to what he's doing. His voice is a little high pitched, but it does well with some of the later stuff as well.
Yeah, and he's not a super melodic vocalist, but his cadence and his voice fits the music perfectly. It's a perfect match.
Definitely, it's a little bit of it's a bit of a surprising pick on that one for sure. But you were saying you maybe like some of the later albums, experimental, progressive phases as opposed to maybe some of the earlier ones. Well, the early one or two, and then they started getting progressive in general. So yeah, definitely cool stuff. Caught me off a little off guard in that one in particular. But yeah, still great stuff. I'm a fan of Rage in general. I do own that, so that's definitely good to see that brought up, or Rage brought up in general. So cool stuff. And yeah, I guess we'll go with my next pick. I'm saving my last two just because I probably would find these probably two of my favorites from on a personal level. And this band has been brought up, I think, by everybody at this point, and I was just saving it for later to do my little spin on why I'm choosing this specific pirate metal album. And so it is very difficult at that point when you are a huge Running Wild fan, because they do have such a large body of work, and at that point all the albums have been pretty incredible through the mid 90s all the way kind of progressing into the 2000s a little bit. But for me, it was really hard to figure out, and even now I couldn't probably figure out which is my favorite Running Wild. That's very difficult. That would be saved for a later Running Wild album ranking. So I'm not sure if this is even my favorite Running Wild.
Oh, that's great.
But in terms of putting together an essential or favorites, if I had to say an essential Running Wild, I'm choosing Death or Glory, just on the fact that if someone's not a fan of Running Wild and we were trying to get them on board or trying to get them to be a fan of Running Wild, I think this would be the essential one where you could bring on a lot of fans just for the couple songs that could be hits, the Bad to the Bone song. So I think if someone were to hear Bad to the Bone, it would be pretty hard to deny that song in general, even if someone's a not even a rock fan or not a metal fan in particular, that would be a song that could have been a huge hit song for them that could win over potential new fans. And obviously the rest of the album is great in general. There's some cool little instrumental later on, and then obviously the opening track, "Riding the Storm," also could have been a huge hit for them if they were a North American band. So I think just kind of off those two songs in specific, the "Riding to the Storm" and "Bad to the Bone," those would be songs that if you played those songs to someone who wasn't a fan, it would be hard to deny those songs as saying, "I don't like those." Like it would be very difficult to find someone that if you played them those songs, they would be to say they didn't like it. And I think for those reasons alone, that reason alone, that's why I am picking Death or Glory as the essential Running Wild, even though you could put Port Royale, a pile of Skulls Up on there, the ones before. So at that point, if you are veering into that bigger Running Wild fandom, it's going to be really hard to crunch down a specific album, Blazing Stone. So it's hard, and kind of just based off the hit factor that a couple of these songs could have done for them and bringing in new fans, I chose this one.
It's a great album.
Yeah.
I love that album.
But even now, I don't know if that would be my favorite. But in terms of maybe essential for the band, bringing in new fans, that's why I chose that one.
I think Running Wild is one of those bands where you go through phases where you love one album and that's your top album, and then maybe a few months later, different album's your top album. That's like one of those bands because most of their stuff is it's so good, especially the 80s and 90s stuff. So good. Well,
and with Running Wild, it's very rare that they have a throwaway track. So going from album to album to album, they basically don't have very many throwaway tracks at all. So it is difficult to crunch down a favorite. And actually, well, I do remember the specific picks. I know Jack picked Port Royale, and then you picked a Blazing Stone. So we have all picked a different Running Wild here. So that's definitely cool. And,
yeah. Your pick's got Bad to the Bone on it.
Yes. Yeah. That is one of the reasons why I kind of picked that as an essential Running Wild, which is very, very catchy.
That might be my favorite Running Wild song. That maybe Lions of the Sea.
Yeah, Lions of the Sea is killer.
I forgot the album that's off of. I don't know. It's a blue cover with 3 guys on it. Can't remember the name of the album. But
yeah, that's a tricky one. Was it the one before this one?
It was from like mid 90s, maybe early 90s. Can't remember the name of it. In any event, that was a good album too. Very, very power metal-y, very hooky, as are all their albums. Except one Running Wild CD I didn't like. I didn't like that EP with the two guns on it. The last one, I think it had a Kiss cover on it.
I think it was called Crossing the Blades.
Yeah, I didn't like that EP at all. I thought I think they used a drum machine or something, and it just didn't sit well with me.
I love the album that came before that, I believe, the Rapid Foray. I love that album. I love Rapid Foray.
Yeah, I had that. It was good.
I really like that one. But we'll go, we probably did enough Running Wild talk between all of us here. So we'll go next with Jack's next pick.
Yeah.
Last pick.
Lucky last. Well, lucky last. Sorry, I have to do it. Metal Heart. Tough decision trying to go between that and Balls to the Wall, but I think Metal Heart sticks in my head as we're talking about the hooks. Probably that little bit stronger. I mean, Up to the Limit has been one of my favorite all-time songs forever. It's just, I just love that track. You know, Midnight Mover. It's all just so good on here. Yeah, Living After Midnight. You just go on all day about how good this album is, and all of the hooks that are on it is just one of those albums. Yeah, I mean, from the classical, I mean, this is like I'm talking about, except trying to capture this period of time before this. You know, nothing will ever be better than this. I mean, even Jimmy Borgia covered Metal Heart. You got a black metal band covering Accept. It just shows you how prolific they were.
Yeah, and actually, I seen Udo a few years back when he was doing his Strictly Accept tour, where he was just doing all Accept songs only, and I dropped everything I could to make that show. Actually, I know it was supposed to happen one year. It was supposed to happen, they booked a tour and it was supposed to happen, but they booked it around it was starting to be winter here in Canada, so he would have to have made the drive from Seattle to Vancouver, and in that middle of the drive, the roads were just horrendous, and they had to cancel the Canadian portion or the next couple shows and things like that. But they rebooked the show for the year later and came back, and I was able to make that show, the rescheduled show, and yeah, it was incredible. It was great. Udo's voice is still top notch. He's playing all the Accept songs. That was great to see a legend like that live.
Did they do Screaming for a Love Bite?
I'm not 100% sure on the full set list that night, but I gotta assume they did. And I drink at concerts and get a little rowdy, so it's not something I would specifically remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, at least you saw them. That's great. They did come down to Australia, but I didn't make it over to. They were playing over in on the East Coast. I didn't get over there. So it's quite a distance between Australia trying to get to a show in a different state. It's usually talking about a 10-hour drive or something like that. So it's a pretty long drive. That's a short one, really.
Yeah, well, I'm totally with you. I'm kind of stuck here in the middle of the mountains. But so 4 hours this way is one city, 2-3 hours this way is another city. So I make my way around wherever the concerts are. But yeah, it's definitely not fun, but sometimes you gotta do it to see these certain bands or artists that really influence you, or your top favorites and whatnot. But that's cool, awesome, cool. Your last pick there, and we'll get Biggs up here with his next pick.
So I'm going to end on a very controversial note. That seems to be the word here that I like. I don't mind being center of controversy. My top pick for an essential German metal album is, we've been talking about Helloween a lot, and it's the first Helloween album with Mr. Roland Grapow on it, and it's Pink Bubbles Go Ape. And I know it's not a popular opinion, but let me explain myself. So Kai Hansen left Helloween. He was a beloved guitarist, and he sang on the first album until Kiski came for the Keeper albums. So when Kai left, they had to find a new guitarist, and when you change in midstream the makeup of a band, you risk losing that sound and that magic and that chemistry, because you're adding a new blood to the band. And for them to bring in Roland and to make an album this good and this melodic is just amazing to me. Even though some of the songs may not seem very Halloween-ish, a lot of people regard this album maybe as kind of a Michael Kiske solo album, as with the next album, Chameleon, which gets even worse reviews. But this album really has a lot of great tracks on it. The first track is kind of a joke track, Pink Bubbles Go Ape. But I mean, Kids of the Century, that's Hook City, Back on the Streets, more hooks. Number One, just a lot of melodic stuff going on here, and Michael's voice has never been better. So I really, really like this album. I play it all the time. It's in my car. It's got the ultra melodic, the chants on it. It's got some heavy stuff, Mankind. Just Kiski's vocals are just what makes this album so good. His layering and his cadence and the timbre of his voice is just so beautiful. So this to me is the essential German album, even though most people kind of disregard it, but this is where it's at. Yeah,
That's probably a curveball, because Halloween has some very respected albums there. Keeper of Keys 1 and 2, Walls of Jericho. I know me specifically, I love Master of the Rings. So there's a lot of variations going on here with Halloween and eras they were going through.
I just think when you take into account everything that they've been through and the level of songwriting, and then just to add a new guy in there, and just to produce that kind of level of musicianship and craftsmanship just amazes me. And the songs really speak for themselves, even though they get a bad rap.
And off the top of my head, obviously I don't play those two a lot, but I do believe that one is much better than Chameleon for sure.
Yeah, Chameleon has some horns on it, which doesn't really do it do very well, but it's got some good tracks on it. I do like that album too, but this one I'll play way more. I probably play it more than the Keepers albums. This one just hits me, in the melodic funny bone. That's where I'm at. I do like the heavy stuff, and I like the sheer gothicness of the Keepers albums and the guitar riffs. But I'm more of a melody guy and I'm more of a hook guy, so that's where I really dig Halloween. And then I do have some honorable mentions. I want to say, I think this Udo album is a really good, very hyper melodic album. And then my favorite Accept album, is this one, Russian Roulette.
That's brilliant. What a great album.
Yeah. Those are my reasons.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, great stuff. I know Halloween has such a body of work. They've gone in a few different directions with various singers. So at that point, it's kind of just your personal preference, and that's why you're on the show here, to get your personal preferences and all these different opinions. So yeah, great stuff. I guess I'm on my last pick here. We're probably on a pretty long-winded show. And my last pick will be, I don't even have much of a lead-up intro here to keep you guys guessing, but I'm picking Tunes of War as the essential Gravedigger album. I know me specific, you can see right here on the front, if anyone's not familiar, the bagpipes guys. So this is actually one of those albums where he had started incorporating some Celtic bagpipe type vibes, and yeah, I love this album. Between all the speedy songs, there is some of those mid-tempo Celtic bagpipe a song or two in this album. A really unique, cool album, and this would probably be one of my more favorite Gravedigger albums. Again, where it would rank on an actual full album ranking, I'm not sure. This might be number one for me, or two. Definitely probably 1, 2, or 3 in that spot. Probably number one, but I think for those kind of reasons alone, this would be my essential Gravedigger. For all those various reasons, especially that super unique bagpipe sections on a couple songs. So yeah, awesome stuff. Really dig the band a lot.
Is that because you live in the mountains and the highlands?
Right, yeah, maybe. No, it is just to go along with what everyone else has been saying about the incredible dynamic productions, with the bass. It's really, when you play it through a stereo, it's all tuned up perfect and all those kind of things. So again, this is 1996, so great productions and all those kind of things that go along with all that, with the Gravedigger stuff, and yeah, incredible album, top to bottom.
Nice.
And I'll grab my little honorable mentions, even though they're not that little, but we'll go through. We got Iron Angel here.
I don't have that one.
Yeah, Iron Angel. You guys probably know this band, Death Row. They had this one, the album after. I'm not quite seeing what was the album after. Oh yeah, you got it, Raging Steel there. Great. Yeah, we're both on the Death Row. And then I even love their third album there when they started to get a little technical. There was a lineup change on that third. Actually, the third album is right behind me, right there. Yeah, right there. And I actually love that album, so I probably could have tossed and turned between both those. So either way. And then another kind of honorable mention would be Darkness, kind of similar to Exhumer. They're kind of probably a cross between Exhumer and Destruction. So you know what you're getting yourself into. If I mention Destruction, thrashy, full of assault. And what do we got here? I believe this to be a first wave of black metal influence. A bit of black metal death influence here for the first couple of Flames. I don't think this was not the first Flames, but in general, Flames was pretty influential to the black scene. And then also the early Necronomicon albums. These first couple of Necronomicon albums, and also the first one. It was actually the first Necronomicon album from 1985-ish. I believe this is 85. And this could be viewed as a proto-death metal. And then we also touched on that Holy Moses already. And then obviously, I'm surprised this didn't really get touched on too much, but the first couple Blind Guardian albums as well would be pretty influential to the German genre in general. So again, Blind Guardian is a fairly known household name. So I gotta assume anyone watching this show probably knows of Blind Guardian, but if you don't, definitely check that out. Again, even with me, I kind of check out a lot with the later 90s symphonic scene. Again, I can't even reel off all the later 90s symphonic metal. Sonata on Arctica was coming out. All these kind of bands were coming out, and I don't go super deep with a lot of that symphonic stuff. Gets a little cheesy for me, but this was kind of before Blind Guardian started experimenting with the symphonic stuff. So I definitely loved the first 5 or 6 Blind Guardians leading up to 95, and then after they started getting leading the charge with that symphonic stuff. But definitely the first couple Blind Guardians, check out if you're not familiar with them. You guys like those first couple Blind Guardians?
Yeah,
Don't mind them. Didn't keep them.
I like Imaginations from the Other Side.
Yeah.
When they started getting a little bit more, or a little bit less, it was a little bit less fantasy based. Like the first few albums were very Lord of the Rings fantasy based, and then they moved towards more of a power metal base.
Yeah, that's another album I do like from them. I own that one as well, and then I kind of check out a bit after that. So that's where I am with Blind Guardian. Obviously, they're good musicians and all that, so I don't want to disrespect them or anything like that. But cool, looks like we had a pretty long-winded show here. I think we'll kind of wrap her up here, and if anyone else got anything else to say, although we probably already said anything we need to say.
Yeah, I'll say these guys, Paradox, they're sometimes quite thrashy, sometimes quite more melodic. Their albums, this one was from 2006, I think it was. Riot Squad, very thrashy. That's why I picked it out as an honorable mention. Yeah, their debut album just was quite astounding. I thought when I heard that back in the 80s, I really liked it. It was a different take on what I was into for German metal at the time. So going away from the death thrashy kind of approach that Minnesota and black thrash approach, or whatever you want to call it, that all the other bands were doing. They were these were more on the Outlaws, I guess, like when we talk about Death Row also and Vendetta and those kind of bands. So mixing it up a little bit, getting a bit more maybe Bay Area sort of sounding. But yeah, Paradox, I think that they're really an underdog that deserves a bit more attention.
I was just trying to remember their first album. It was I forget the first name. The first
Product
album.
of Imagination.
Product, yeah, right. And yeah, it's I don't have any Paradox, so I don't spin them as often as I should. You know, I'd just be at that point having a digital version. So it's definitely something I probably should play more. But I'm definitely familiar with them as well. All right, cool. It looks like everyone got their word that they wanted to say in. I think we'll kind of wrap her up. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. Yeah, subscribe, mosh, and see you later.
Metal on.
Cheers.